Welcome to episode 39, Plat Chat VALORANT. I'm wearing a hat because it's cold in here. I'm all chilly. It's wintry.
Yeah, you're stealing Bren's latest look, but you're putting your own spin on it. You kind of got a little gnome energy going on.
The longer he's gone, the more I will emulate him. Eventually, I'll be a full degenerate caveman just aping out on the set.
Is that what it is, or are you just a Pokemon trainer now?
Yeah, we've seen some of the speed run. It's been more of a slow run than a speed run.
I did a Pokemon Emerald slow run over the course of this last weekend, and it was a disaster. I also had people coming into my chat repeatedly and being like, "Hey, are you watching the VCT games today? They're really good." And I was like, "Nah, it's just Sentinels BBG. I'm not tuning in for that. I'll just continue doing my Pokemon speed run." No, but honestly, BBG are up 8-4 at the half. Nah, it's fine. Sentinels will come back. How little I knew. How little I knew.
I mean, no one. I mean, there's just, you can't.
The one guy.
I know.
The guy on Reddit that we mentioned.
Whoever that one man was who posted that thread, there's two possibilities. He either posts that every week for every wild upset. If you go into his post history, it just happens every week. No. Beast Coast, they're going to beat FaZe. He either does that every week and it just finally paid off. Or, actually, I don't know what the other "or" is. Is that
he's
just,
a time traveler from the future?
This is some sort of almanac Biff situation. I don't understand how else this could be possible.
Biff, okay. What a reference! I like that.
I want to get into the upsets as well. Oh, also, by the way, I re-signed for the Overwatch League. Yeah, I'm still doing the show.
No, that's not what I heard.
What you talking about, people on Reddit? Why would I not be able to do a podcast? Because I'm continuing with the Overwatch League.
Well, you won't be able to because you're opening your vape/taco truck with Wyatt, and that's why you're dressed like that. Now that you're in Austin, you're gonna be driving around there. Everyone's like, "This place is off the grid. It's so hip." The guy wears a beanie. Like, we gotta go here. We gotta go here.
This isn't even a beanie. This is just a woolly hat. This is just a
woolly hat,
hat.
beanie, whatever.
Yeah, but still, it does look like you're ready to make me some drip coffee.
I don't know how to make coffee. I don't drink it. You'll have to.
Well, you're the vape guy. Wyatt's the coffee guy. That's the thing. It's a duel. It's a duel.
Distributing vapes to the Austinites.
I like to
There's got to be
my lungs
somewhere too.
Oh yeah, a skateboard shop could be there as well.
All in one truck.
God,
all in one food truck.
Yeah, all I need to do is condense my forehead and I reinvent myself as another person, apparently. I don't think it's even the hat. I think it's just, you can't
that would just be cosmetic, like facial reconstruction. So it sort of would be reinventing yourself if you drastically change your skull size. It kind of would be.
All right, let's talk about the upsets that happened in North America then. I want to start with BBG over Sentinels, because that's got to be... I was going to say the biggest upset that we've seen in Valorant. I don't know whether I can really lay the claim at the feet of BBG yet, though. Because it's not like I've trawled through the data, taking a look at what the big upsets were. I can't remember, but it's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, it has to be up there. I think when Europe had a bunch of its upsets for the last Masters or like Challengers like 2 and 3, like those were up there for me. But I don't know if this is even the greatest upset of all time necessarily, but it is big. It definitely has to go towards the top.
Yeah,
I think all those EU ones were like best of ones as well. Like the Heretics one was a best of one. Any other ones were probably best of ones as well. This is a best of 3 in the round of 16 for the qualifying match. So I think I scale that pretty high up there in level of upsets.
And it was the nature of the win. It was not really close. They kind of got smashed.
They really did. Ascent was brutal. Ascent was brutal.
It was 35 again.
Yeah, 13-5.
That's just, it was not close.
It wasn't a hard-fought victory. Also, I want to add some additional context, too, for anyone who hasn't been following the scene as closely, because I also thought that this was the case until about 5 days ago. There is no Challengers 3.
Right.
So what I thought it was still the same as last time for Masters 1, where you had Challengers 1, the top 4 teams going to Challengers 2, and then the top... I can't remember the previous format. But anyway, Challengers 1 wasn't as important because you didn't directly qualify for finals based off your Challengers 1 performance. It just got you into the next stage. This time you do. There's no such thing as Challengers 3. You can't pull off 100 Thieves lose horribly in the first one and then still claw your way back through later on. There's only 4 spots left for these teams, and there were so many upsets.
Yeah.
That makes this way more important than it otherwise would have been.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so now Sentinels, and as we go through, I mean, the rest of the upset, all of the guys who performed at the top of Masters 1 all only have one more chance. And there's only there are 4 spots in this one, and then 4 spots in the next of the two challenger main events here. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, about that game specifically, I mean, I think much of the conversation was just centered around Sentinels and how they were playing, which is, you know, that's going to be a given based on the fact that they're, you know, the number 1 team talks about. But I do think BBG were getting perhaps a bit undersold as to how well they were actually playing, because I was very impressed with their game. Clear difference coming in with the new roster. A lot of credit to be given to Poach as to how refined this team looked in such a short period of time. Also, finally, some of the pieces on that team that we've seen been good players in this better system where they were playing pretty fast. They were playing really decisive. The retakes were all really very fast with actual set piece utility, but they were constantly catching the Sentinels players out, and you could see Yor having a bunch of really good moments where he was on the lurk. Critical was having a bunch of really high impact kills, but now they were doing it within a system that was actually bringing them round wins. I was very impressed by BBG. I thought that they played an excellent game, and that was not being looked at, because if you just were exclusively looking at Sentinels in a vacuum, they had a lot of flump moments, which to me were all coming off the back of their fundamentals were not at their best. There were like there were rounds where there was that one caught on camera where Will had his Phoenix ult into A, and there's like 2 Sentinels players watching the same angle. Or Kurt, actually, if you want to pull up a great example of what I'm getting at, the very last round of Haven at the very end of the game, there are 4 Sentinel players alive trying to retake B in a 4v3, and they're all looking down mid, and Bjor just walks through link and shoots them in the side. Yeah. Like moments like there were a lot of moments like that, and that's what defined the game to me. I think the Sentinels' fundamentals were off, and they were looking kind of flat, but you can't take away how good BBG looked because of, you know, them not being at their best.
Yeah. I think decisive is the word that I would use when you're describing BBG. It was like, yeah, they were decisive on some of the misplays that Sentinels was making. Like, there was a lot of times we're watching this round that you're talking about, Wyatt, now, but like, there's a lot of times where they would just make bad reads or make bad rotates or leave space that you would previously see them never give up. Like, there was things that BBG was just able to completely take control of and then just go off of very basic executes. It's not like they were running something weird, right? It's not like they were running Astra. They're just running normal double duelist NA style and doing simple splits, simple 5-man pushes after defaults that were pretty quick off of a read. And it would just catch them off by surprise. There was a lot of like solo pushing by Sentinels, 10 specifically. We want to talk about like the whole him flying to LA and like not having a lot of sleep before this match and like how that impacted, because he was flat too.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Tens though, because even before this match, I don't know whether you guys got the same impression, but even when it was just them playing against like Sonics, for example, so far Tens has had a mare of a tournament. Like this has been like the worst tournament showing I've ever seen from Tens so far, just in this small, like, what is it, 3-4 game sample size. But he's not just been like not himself, as in carrying games. He's been actively losing them many rounds by overfacing, missing his shots, taking really poor duels and missing his shots. It's like the combination of like the disrespect of his opponent to go for these kind of plays, but not actually his mechanics being in position to bail him out of them. And this hasn't just been confined to this one game. It feels like it's been happening repeatedly too. He, at the beginning of the Sonics game, was getting pounded. I think he went something like, he was 4-12, 4-13 or something before he started to get back into it, and he still ended negative in that match because he was just swinging constantly and then not being able to deliver. It couldn't find the timings. It wasn't based on what the rest of the team was doing. And it feels like this honeymoon period for Sentinels where tens just fit in so naturally is over. It feels like it's kind of disappeared for a moment, and now comes the real grind of getting good with him in.
Yeah, I would definitely.
I also think that we talked about. Oh, sorry, Wyatt. Do you want to go?
No,
okay, I was just going to say,
Connor,
coming off of Balla's point earlier, was that was the thing that really stood out to me for this match in particular. It was not so much the tens point, but it goes into that, is that they did very basic executes a lot of the time for BBG, and it was nothing too crazy. Like, we weren't seeing anything that was they weren't even, these teams didn't even play Astra, so we weren't even seeing like the Cosmic Divide come up to like allow a free site push or anything, or Viper to split the site. It was just pretty standard executes off the back that Sentinels, despite the fact that, and we've talked to Dapper, Douglas Apper on the co-streams and things like that. And they talked about how much they value map control and owning orbs, and they just didn't take any map control, particularly on Ascent. Like, Haven, it got a little bit better, but particularly on Ascent, and it was very strange to see them seem like have so little map control throughout this series, which just mean that BBG had like all the ability to read the map and just hit a site and rotate,
stuff like
because
that,
there was never pressured.
Stuff like that on this round is so well played by BBG. To send it's not that BBG were doing anything insane, but all of their fundamentals look really tight. They send in the Jett. They realize that Dapper could be playing inside his cage there. First guy jiggle peeks. They get a little bit of info. They swing us 2 or maybe even 3 there. And they just very methodically clear out the whole of Sentinels, who are all playing very individually throughout this match.
Yeah. It was just very anti-Sentinels, like what we've seen from them in the past. Like, it's one thing if Tens is on a different wavelength than them, but this was just like a whole collapse of the system they had built up to this point, because they had constantly talked about, gotta own orbs, gotta own extremities, gotta do this, and they just forgot they existed during this series. So it was very odd.
I'd also say that on Ascent particularly, the BBG attacking rounds put a lot of early mid. Like, they were droning mid and taking it within the first 10, 20 seconds, which, when you think about how Sentinels like to play their defense with 10s in, which did differ quite significantly from their prior style, they like to play 10s in mid. Like, 10s likes to play close mid and peek and try and apply early pressure, and Sick likes to swing on Cat. And both of those ideas got countered because mid was just being held from minute 0 in the round. And unfortunately, Sentinels never reacted to that and never took extremity control away from BBG as like, okay, you can have mid, but we'll take B main, we'll take A main. They push like Zoms into Wine sometimes, and they occasionally tried to put like a player to spot in B main, but they weren't pushing. They didn't. They just very quickly, as soon as they droned down mid, they had given up all map control.
Yeah, BBG specifically, Yor was doing a really nice job of controlling B main throughout the attacking half. And Rarkar was doing a good job of controlling A main throughout the attacking half. On a lot of the rounds, it was just those 2 individuals controlling the extremities. And throughout the rest of the BBG clump, they were just doing a really nice job of pressuring different areas of the map with full force and then just rotating back. They ended on a lot of B splits, and there was never a situation that came up where they ended on a B split and B was really stacked with players or Sentinels were properly prepared for it. Like, it always came down to, like, Rarkar would have A main, Bjor would be in B main, and then maybe Bjor would rotate off a little bit, leave an alarm bot. The clump would pressure mid, the clump may pressure like towards cat grass, and then they rotate back, hit a B split, and there's 2 guys on B still. It's like Dapper.
Right, because they have no information. They don't know that the B split is coming through because they can't gather any useful info. And I think that the information game is normally what Sentinels are so excellent at, in my opinion. You can say that they're the most skilled team or whatever, but I think when it comes down to it, like, what's put them at the top of the scene for so long is that they play the info game better than everybody else. They have the players with the confidence to push and make info plays, but they also have setups that revolve around like Dapper being able to get info really well and pressuring many different areas of the site. I think they do it really well on attack and defense. I think it flumped this time around.
I think one thing though is we can't take away credit from BBG because like they were playing relatively mistake free. Like there was no situations that Sentinels was all of a sudden like striking on, which they normally do, like somebody missing a dart timing, or when they make the info play, they're not already right? When there wasn't info play by Tens, by Dapper, whatever, BBG is ready to strike. They're ready to execute. They'll kill that guy and then instantly be on the site or ready to do the split. So that's something that I think we should. I think when it comes to this prep discussion and like how much BBG is able to counter Sentinels and stuff like that, like sure, yes, that's an element, but also to me, it's more like BBG prepped solely on like fundamentals. Like they were just really mistake free and pretty good on hitting their shots. So
I also
that's where I'm like, that prep is good right there. They were double swinging, like really good stuff.
I don't buy the stuff that Shaz was talking about on stream either, really, as being the reason that they lost. Like the idea of it being that they Shaz was saying there isn't enough time for them to reinvent themselves, and all of these other lower level teams get more time to be able to watch all of their games, to practice, to like play in the lower level tournaments, and then they come into the next one, and that's what they've done. They've put in all of the prep work to be able to beat teams like Sentinels. I think that's fair to say if you were getting like hard anti-stratted or something. I didn't feel like that was the Sentinels didn't play a great game though. Like if you're playing your A game and someone hard anti-strats you, okay, I can understand how that would be a pretty reasonable takeaway from what happened. To me, it felt more like a Super Bowl hangover. You know the term from NFL where it's like when you win, you're less motivated and focused on the next tournament because you already have that like the lack of focus because you've just won something. That I think was very prevalent in this game. Sentinels came in expecting to win. They were really sloppy. All of their focus and their fundamental play was out of the window, and they were playing very puggy, like super puggy. Like they're just wide swinging. They're just trying to make plays solo all around the map. And I think if you're not coming into a game super focused and really respecting your opponent, which I think is understandable for Sentinels, that the fact that they have to even go through an open qualifier in the first place is unusual for a scene like this. And all of the mistakes that they were making, to me, indicated that they just weren't, their full mind wasn't on the game here. They hadn't turned up and focused on it. I think the fundamentals are the first thing to slip, to be honest, when you're in a situation like that. Because you have to be so focused on the game and be aware of where your teammates are and always be making the right decisions. It's so easy to just jump in and play like a ranked game where you're taking risks all the time. You're not paying as much attention to where your teammates are. You're just playing your own game. That's what it felt like to me.
Especially when you have a couple of rounds against teams that have no business playing against you. You fall back into really bad habits against teams like that. Like the first game that they played that was on stream where he's like, oh, we were trolling because we're trying to make it entertaining and stuff like that. Like that sort of game sends you right back, even though it might be a stomp, because you're not fully, working out the kinks, right? We mentioned that it was like slightly puggy, but to me it wasn't like that. They were doing set A main control, but like or bunch of different strats, and they were just leaving it. And they were just not following up on like what really, really makes them good on the ends. Like there was a couple of rounds where they did this like 3 times in a row. They threw the molly over A main. This is on defense side of Sent. Threw the molly over A main. Tens pushes with a flash from Zombs, and then he clears the corner. But after that, they just left it. So they were still running these strats, these ideas that they're so good at. It just was no follow through.
I also think we should totally talk about the fact that you brought up shortly. It is crazy that Sentinels, the team that literally just won the last Masters, is in an open qualifier again 2 weeks later. Like that. It doesn't excuse them losing to BBG here. BBG played really well. They played better than Sentinels, 100%. Like, that's not to be excused. But to me, I feel like, especially if we're going to have like a million tournaments in a row, it's crazy that we're going to put people that literally win Masters in an open qualifier 2 weeks later. In an online open qualifier that's like single elim, mind you, as well. Because now they have to go to compete in Challengers 2 to hopefully make it to the next Masters. And, and they just want, and like realistically, this should not be, based off everything we've seen, Sentinels is definitely not a team that should, be on the precipice of not being able to make the next Masters.
Wait there though, Avast. I'm gonna counter your argument with my Reddit Timmy logic. Give me one moment.
Okay. Waiting.
Okay, here we go.
Pokemon.
But Avast! They should be in the open qualifiers. They lost to BBG. If you can't beat BBG, you don't deserve to go past BBG.
You know what, Reddit Timmy? Redditor Jones 69. That's infallible logic. That's a steel trap of a logic box I'm caught in. My leg, I'm gonna have to gnaw it off to get out of that logic trap there, because no. But they're online. We're in an online situation, right? And we know that this is not a team that has ups. This isn't FaZe, right? Which also another team we're gonna have to talk about. This isn't FaZe. We're like, okay, they'll win some, they'll lose some. Like, this is Sentinels. They've had a history of being really good. They just won the last Masters convincingly by a very strong margin. Like, this is definitely not a situation like this. Who knows how Sentinels would have showed up when we weren't an open qualifier situation, right? Because like their mentality would have been very different if they were not in open quals versus BBG in this, this match. So it is ridiculous to me that they're there, but obviously people are gonna be like, well, they lost to BBG, so they deserve to be in open quals. And it's like, well, what if they hadn't lost to BBG? Did they deserve to be in open quals? Like, it's like kind of just a chicken and egg argument.
What do you think a solution would be?
Just not put them in open quals. I would say they at the very least need to be in like, they should probably be in, because they definitely lost in the round of 16, right? Yeah. I mean, I would say that they should be going in like to the main event, like straight.
They take the top 2 or top 4 from Masters and just put them straight into
top 2 would be perfectly fine.
I think top 2 is reasonable.
The other thing you could do too is seed them straight at, like, give them buys up until a round of like 32 or something like that, right? Just like there's a lot of ways to do that.
If there was like huge gaps in tournaments, I think that's fair, right? To like put them back in the open quals. Like, wouldn't think that would be unreasonable. But when you have like a 2-week turnaround, and also the meta and there hasn't really been a meta shift at all, realistically, besides Astra, and which is like nut. She didn't even make that much of an appearance. She made appearances in an A, but she was far less used in an A, I think, than she was in EU.
24% pick rate, I think.
Yeah, but wasn't she used a lot more in EU?
I believe
actually
pretty similar. It's
very similar.
It just felt like I saw. I guess it's just because I saw it more.
I think the better teams were using her more in EU, but overall, like the just general pick rate was pretty similar.
It was like the opposite, right? The better teams in the EU were using Astra, and the worst teams were not. But in NA, it was like the worst teams were using Astra, and the better teams were kind of ignoring it. Ignoring her.
I also want to bring up the idea that gets brought up quite often within fan bases too, which is that you can't be a good team if you're losing to teams like BBG. Like that logic gets used quite a lot. But the fact of the matter is, when you play that many games, upsets are an inevitability. In almost any game, like people talk about the volatility of esports and stuff. They're way less volatile than traditional sports. In traditional sports, you don't normally get win streaks that last a huge amount of time, huge dominant eras. You go into a game, and there's a reason why any given Sunday is a thing that's said all the time to like horrific repetition within traditional sports broadcasts. It doesn't really apply as much in esports. It's not like you can just throw in a random team in the open qualifier against Sentinels and it's like any given Sunday, anyone can win. No, Sentinels are going to win like 90% of the time. But there's still that 5-10% upset chance for a team. And when you play out so many different open qualifier games, you're going to lose. It's like the same logic could be used for like TenZ playing a 1v, or TenZ taking a duel against any Immortal Plus player in an open qualifier game or whatever. Is TenZ supposed to win every duel? He might be favored to win every duel because he's a better player, but he's not literally going to win every single duel.
I beat TenZ in DM once.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you're going to be able to still
maybe
win.
I am better than TenZ.
You're not better than TenZ. You are not better than TenZ.
Wyatt was playing in the corner waiting for TenZ to spawn.
Gas me up,
He's just waiting for the sound cues so he can post that screenshot on Twitter. TenZ down, DM Warlord here.
Speaking of Reddit takes, by the way, there was a post after they lost where it was like, TenZ is gonna maybe try to make his way so he could stay on Cloud9 now that Cloud9 is in the Challengers one.
That's really good.
I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure
the whole post.
He's so looking forward to going back and joining Cloud9 Blue after their victory over Gen.G. Let's talk about that game, though. Let's transition. So there's also the big upset for version 1 over FaZe, but I want to skip over that a little bit since we're on the topic of Cloud9 and talk about C9 winning over Gen.G here, because Cloud9 have actually won the most recent Tier 2 tournament, right? They won in the, what was it called?
NSG something or other.
Yeah.
NSG monthly.
Sure.
NSG qualifier.
Yeah, NSG March monthly.
Something.
There we go. Yeah. They beat Unbox in that tournament. But it wasn't like there was the most elite competition in there. You can see version 1, Ghost, Renegades, Sandbox, some like decent teams, but not what you would consider
the tier 2
best.
mainstays.
Yeah.
Really.
So when I saw Cloud9 going in here, I was like, all right, maybe they'll be able to do well, but I would have still heavily favored Gen.G.
I mean, I definitely would have favored Gen.G. Immediately off the jump, when you're seeing the Cloud9 comp now, it does make a lot more sense than what they were running before. I mean, obviously, more than anything, probably just the putting Zeta back on the support role where his utility matters more than his fragging, given that even not only us, but Cloud9 were acknowledging as to just how good his utility usage was, and then they put him on Jett, where he was not finding anywhere near the same success as when he was playing the Breach for them before, etc. So glad to see him back on a supporting role where his utility comes first, and that's what matters. Also, glad that they're actually going to try and use Poise, the at some point #1 ranked potential upcoming star player.
Well, I mean, now they have to, right? Because they don't have Vice.
Well,
So
yeah, they got rid of Vice so they
use,
could start him finally. I mean, they should have just done that when they signed him, because why else are you signing a potential upcoming star player? Are you just not going to play him? I mean, just play him. But finally, they're playing him. Also, though Leaf was excellent on Omen, I'm fine with seeing Leaf on Duelist and putting Relics on Omen where he was on before. Finally, they have a comp that actually makes sense. So I'm not surprised that there was an immediate level up, just given that these roles are actually, this is clearly the roles that these guys should be on. Bless you, Kurt. So immediately, I think that is a positive. Just looking at that right away. And I think that one of the main things you saw, some of the success they were finding with this lineup, I mean, again, a lot of it, honestly, to me, did come from Leaf. Leaf is just really good. And I'm very okay with him being on the Duelist, and they were just letting him, he was just off the leash. He was doing whatever he wanted, and he was finding a lot of impact on a lot of the rounds on both maps. Taking a lot of map control. He was just pushing on his lonesome, often doing the Reyna thing, and he was finding a lot of impact kills doing it. But in this series specifically, the last 2 rounds of this game came down to overtime, and Gen.G just fucking fumbled both of them, and then it looked like they came into the next map, boomed. Also, Kusta on Sova and Mikhail on Killjoy, because sure.
Yeah,
but
that is weird.
But unfortunately, it was in the last 2 rounds, they lost a 3v2, and then in the final round, Kusta it ended up in a 1v1, and he was playing it really slow, and Cloud9 just diffused in front of his face, and it looked like they were just boomed on map 2. But
any further impressions from you two with the C9 Gen.G game?
I think Wyatt summed it up pretty damn well.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like, once again, I've entered onto the Gen.G roller coaster, and we had the high right before we're about to plunge down, and everyone's like, we're having fun. We're having fun on the Gen.G coaster, and now we've finished the loop, and we're back to the symptom of what the fuck just happened with Gen.G, I feel like this is just and obviously it doesn't mean that they're still their baseline is far higher than where they were, but I feel like that's just because they've been bringing the techs in, they've been working on the ride, the Gen.G coaster's been improving, but we're still at the situation where, like Wyatt talked about, they're fumbling very key things and doing like some weird shit. And I do think part of the reason they're doing weird things, like they're moving Mikhail and Kusa to different roles, is that there is sort of a meta shift happening. Like obviously in an A, teams weren't utilizing her, like not the good teams too much with Astra. Like even in this match, neither of these teams played Astra at all but like I do feel like we're going to be in a situation, especially since after this particular challenges, we're going to patch 2.06, that there is teams are starting to feel like, well, I feel like we need to move our agent choices around. We need to change up how we're approaching the maps. And Gen.G is probably looking at like, okay, this is some things we need to change and we need to evolve when we move forward with this meta. But they just do not have a good grasp on how they want to play it right now, I think. And their role swaps are probably a pretty big indicator of that.
It was like what we were saying earlier, like the teams who got to Masters don't have that much time to reinvent themselves. It feels like Gen.G maybe wanted to try something to reinvent themselves, but it wasn't like a leap in going in any specific direction. Like, let's play Viper now on this map, like we saw at EU or anything like that. It was just mostly like, let's just do something slightly different to switch it up.
I just don't see why that is the change, though. I'm not. I'd love to know what the idea was behind that, because the most visible difference it made was that you now had neither player looking entirely comfortable in regards to feeling comfortable enough to go for an impact kill. And one of the things that was making Gen.G so good, actually, in that Masters tournament, I think Mikhail was playing some of the best that he ever had. He was just, and a lot of it was coming from him just being excellent at trading. He was always able to trade. And Kusa was often finding the like first bloods in rounds from the Sentinel role. And it wasn't even just from like him trying to take an area of map control and then he has to fight someone. There were a lot of moments where he would just be in a position where it's like, oh, I have to find an entry right now. And he would do it. But on Sova, at least in the games that we were able to watch, he was playing so slow. He was just he was not finding the same impact kills that he was when he was on Sentinel.
That's
and
sad.
Yeah, it was I mean, no, seriously, after that ending, it looked like on the next map, they just came into it and they were
Dude, it's funny because like a couple of rounds ago, it was like Cloud9 almost like couldn't defuse because they were locked down. Like I think that was one sending into overtime. Oh my
God. It was
God.
very funny. But yeah, still, credit to Cloud9, though, for making, I mean, kind of feels like finally, but they made the adjustments they needed to. I suppose, sure, they were trying to experiment before and figure out what would be best, but it felt like this was just like, all right, come on, can we just do the thing that we know is going to work now? And it's...
Yeah, it's a rough time to do it as well, considering that now they have to go back to the next qualifier. I feel like if they had just stuck with, they could probably have made it through here.
Almost feels like
fine,
experimenting in challengers would be better, right? Like, because then you got at least 2 chances, 100% guaranteed to go to finals.
Who do you feel better about, Cloud9 or BBG moving forwards?
That's
actually a really tough one, because BBG to me looks so much better. Honestly, BBG fundamentals look amazing. Like, that's the one thing that's like, and to me, with every game, no matter, it doesn't even matter the game, fundamentals are 90% of how you win or lose. And the fundamentals for BBG, when you watch them versus Sentinels, was really, really good. Like, really, really good. And so to me, I feel more confident about BBG than I do C9. But I think C9 has like the potential, because they've been at the top and they have some very strong players, especially some that we haven't seen a lot, like Poise, that they could break out. But I'm kind of feeling BBG right now. No lie, I'm kind of feeling BBG.
I think the fact that BBG beat Sentinels, they're better, right? They're their best team in NA and whatnot, might overrate them over others.
Yeah.
Cloud9 is not they're not necessarily in this honeymoon period or anything like that. BBG just added Poach and Varkar.
True.
And they look great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's gonna stick around. And I have good faith in Poach. And I actually have good faith in that team overall. They seem pretty selfless, like what we were hearing from Poach. But I just have to give it to Cloud9 just because they literally just won against some of the teams that BBG has actually been struggling against, like Renegades and whatnot. So it has to be Cloud9 for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a little bit of honeymooning going on with BBG. I do think that BBG is going to be I think they're going to be a higher level team in the scene than they were before, and they're going to be a more competitive team that we'll see in like the top 10. But I think that Cloud9 are not in a honeymoon period. They just finally they cut off the excess fat. They were trying to figure out what was going on, and they finally got to like the actual.
Well, are we talking about short term or long term for both these squads? By the way, because short term, if we're in the middle of a honeymoon, then I feel like BBG should 100% be more favored if we're in the honeymoon phase, right? And then they might drop off like afterwards. But long term,
we don't have to think about it too hard.
Yeah, I just wanted to know because the thing is as well. I mean, we're about to see a bracket play out, right? I just wanted your guys' like rough feelings for how it for the teams moving forward. I don't think you need to be like hard on one team over another right now. There's a lot of teams that are like that are just on their way to break out. It feels a little bit like former XSET or former LG when they take that next step into the next echelon of talent.
I will say I do have some faith in this Cloud9 team now. From what I saw here and the lineup they have, Leaf is definitely a star player, and it's astounding how much better Zeta is immediately on a support role. I mean, he's even he's fragging better on the role than he was when he was on Jett. So I do have faith in the roster, the comp they have right now, and the way they were playing too.
Yeah,
they were just like, remember, I don't want to stay on Cloud9 forever, but remember when we were talking about, I can't remember what game it was, but they were just so slow. I believe they were quite
it might have been that
ponderous.
game against T1.
Yeah, it was against T1.
That was awful.
They were just, but
it was truly appalling.
This was the exact opposite of that. They were faster at taking map control. They were decisive on Ascent. Leaf was just fearlessly pushing out. There were a lot of rounds where him and Poise were just controlling areas of the map and way better Cloud9 than I've seen since TenZ has left. So I have some faith.
Okay, there's another big upset that happened because the number 1 team from Masters, they got knocked out, Sentinels. The number 3 team from Masters, Gen.G, they get knocked out by... We just talked about it. C9.
C9.
Okay, come on, brain.
That beanie's just squeezing that little brain down, isn't it?
The number 2 team, though, from Masters, FaZe, also got eliminated in the same round by version 1. And I didn't get a chance to watch the C9 Gen.G game, so I didn't weigh in on that discussion at all. But this game I did watch, and I started out on Haven, and it feels like... Shazam was saying, these teams that came out of Masters don't get time to reinvent themselves. And FaZe said, no, fuck you, we're going to try it anyway. Because Haven, they had, I don't know what this thing is about the NA teams putting their entries on Breach, but my God, it's got to stop, guys. It has to stop. If this is what it takes, if this is some kind of like monkey's paw for us to get Breach, we're like, guys, NA should really play with more Breach. And then they're like, star player on Breach? Yes, sir. No, wait. You have to put the right player on the Breach. And I think that Shotup is not the right player to be playing Breach. And I don't think that Corey is either. I think that the way that they were playing Haven was so much worse than how they've played Haven in the past. And Corey's transition away from the Raze onto the Reyna, which I don't even want to say that FaZe know themselves what they want to play. Because if you look at the comps that they ran over the whole of the qualifier, they ran very different things depending on what team they were playing against. They haven't actually solidified down to one comp. This Haven, they ran Corey on the Breach. The prior Haven, they ran Corey back on Reyna, which I understand that makes some degree of sense with the way that Corey likes to play, but they were getting so much consistency out of the Raze that they were massively lacking when they had tried to play Corey on like Phoenix or Reyna in the past. I'm not a big fan. I don't think this is, when I look at this FaZe comp, this is the comp to run if you're a very structured team, and they're not.
Yeah, I feel like this is them preparing to rematch against Sentinels, because they got destroyed and they're like, we need definitely to figure out something to beat them. We need to be better at this style than anything else, because I don't get why you would try to do anything other than that no Sentinel Breach from Zachary, run it down style that they were running throughout all of Masters and Challenger 3, right? No other team aside from Sentinels has proved that they could stop that. So why I get like maybe start to try it a little bit against maybe the weaker teams, but this is version 1, man. This is version 1. You've beaten them before. Like, just do what works. You know what works.
Yeah. And it was so hard for Bebe to get value as well with Corey, particularly on Haven. But it was just like, without the Raze and the dual threat, it even was on Icebox, it was really hard for Bebe to get much value throughout this game and to do nearly as much smeeging. The smeeging output was reduced significantly because of this comp. Like, it simply was just not enough smeeg to go around. And this team runs on smeeg, and it was rough. It was just rough for them.
Zach is just a better Breach right now. I understand that might be because Corey hasn't played enough to get a good grasp of how the agent works. But even if you take out the fact that Corey likes to go first, Corey's so good with his gunplay, stuff like that, the actual utility usage was just way better from Zachary. And it would take a long time for Corey to get up to that level, and I don't even think it's the right thing to do. I'd rather they just bailed on this experiment now, to be honest.
I would agree. I think what I would have said is essentially what you were touching on the first point, that I just think Corey's Raze was too important. I think whenever I've watched him play Reyna or some of the other duelists, It's when that's when he becomes too reliant on just, I'm going to click on everyone. And of course, that is what Reyna is at her core, is just trying to click on people. But FaZe leveled up because they were making plays off the back of his Raze utility constantly. And that is part of what they were missing. I mean, just things as simple as all over the map, they will use the boombot and it will trigger a flash. It'll trigger the paranoia. It'll trigger a Zachary breach flash, like things like that. And they're just missing that. To speak on version 1, though, for a little bit, I do think that they, on that Haven map, they were the only team I had witnessed in this entire tournament use an attacking AWP effectively. Partly, I think, because they were playing against FaZe and they were expecting certain things, like FaZe to try and push up into a lobby when they're on defense. And Vanity would just post up, okay, free kill on Marv. He's going to do that very often. They're actually just getting value out of the attacking AWP on their Omen, which was nice because other players were not. Wardell couldn't, Tens couldn't, but Vanity could. So they were using that effectively. And also, I think that part of the reason they won, at least, they had a really nice attacking half. They were just doing fast sight hits almost every single round. The rounds where they slowed it down, they were struggling, and FaZe were finding picks across the map just against their default. But their fast sight hits were really nice. Zelsis got the ball rolling with just the fragging out Reyna. He was just playing with maximum confidence. And they had a really nice attacking half, and I think they won that map on their attacking rounds. And I think that there was this interesting dynamic with that game where version 1 and FaZe, not only do they end up playing against each other in tournaments, but evidently they scrim against each other constantly.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it led to this interesting dynamic that I think you saw play out in the second half too, where FaZe were just going C over and over. And you would just see the version 1 were pushed out of A every round. Like Zelsis and Penny were pushing up A, and it never mattered. They would take A lobby control, never mattered. FaZe would just hit C, and then it would just be a 5-on-5 retake for like 6 rounds in a row. It was pretty peculiar. But I was impressed by version 1, and throughout I was really impressed, specifically version 1 on defense. On Icebox and Ascent, they were just constantly switching up their early round decision. Like, they would have Penny with an AWP playing in a different place. They would be making a significant utility play early round in a different spot. They would, one round they would like contact push up an area early on Icebox A. Zelsis would just walk up, and then the next round Penny would just be holding it close angle with an AWP on Jett. Like, they were just doing a really nice job mixing up the defensive rounds, and there were so many early rounds that it just ruined FaZe right off the bat. I was impressed by version 1. I think they were playing a pretty solid game.
I think this is a team that deserves to qual for challengers eventually after so many barely misses in the first stage. So it'll be really, really fun to watch. And something we have to mention is Vanity with his freaking Bucky, bro. He just took that to another level. Yeah. Holy moly. It felt like they got so many eco rounds because of him. And
this is the last ode to Bucky, right? Like, we're on patch 2.05, so I feel like version 1 are doing the swan song for Bucky as it's out the door.
It isn't, though. What I figured out recently, I don't know whether we can pull up the patch again, Kurt. After we came out of our discussion about the Bucky in the previous patch notes, I reread the patch notes and I talked to Mike a little bit, who's such a bloody nerd. And he was like, I said, I made an offhand comment to him about, it being like the death of the Bucky. And he was like, it's not. Stop spreading that shit. It's wrong. And then he ran me through the math. And the way that they've modified it is that it does a huge amount of damage if you're close. It does 20 damage per pellet when you're close. And so a right click is still a one-hit kill if you land, I think it's like 2 headshot pellets and 3 body shot pellets or something like that. I can't be bothered doing the math live on the show. Mike ran me through it, but it's still very feasible to be able to get a one-shot Bucky shot, even though there's only 5 pellets in the right click, which I thought it was just actually gone, dead completely. But you can still get the kill. But there's only now one way in which you can get a one-shot kill. So it should still be a lot weaker. But it's not completely dead. I just wanted to slot that in there and correct ourselves from last week.
All I know is on
I feel like that's going to achieve the same result for the most part anyways, because why buy that when you can buy on an eco round, if you buy extra utility or like some light armor and get like a frenzy and a ghost or something, you know, like versus getting the Bucky.
Yeah, it might be more consistent.
On the other thing to note is we're playing 2.05 in challenges.
Never going to be able to tell you about Icebox.
Sorry, go ahead.
It doesn't matter now. No.
I don't even want to hear it anymore.
It doesn't even matter. I was just going to say, Vanity, I think he had 13 kills on Icebox.
Don't
9
care.
of them were with the Bucky.
Don't care.
Doesn't matter now, does it? Doesn't matter now.
I'm trying to tell you, why it does. We are playing 2.05 in the next challengers.
Anything else
Well, I mean,
to say about FaZe?
On top of that Icebox, I felt like to add on to that point, the missing raise was like huge for them on Icebox because that should have been FaZe's map of all the maps was Icebox, and they tried to do that same strategy often of like, okay, we're gonna sit there at A with the slow push and just get kills and then push A because we'll just watch the site. But without the raise nade, they were never able to actually force any of the players to like, they were never able to set up any other utility to set up like someone getting a kill because Corey just only had leaders now. And then version 1, while it was happening, while they're just sitting there looking at A, they would sometimes try to send like Baby Bay or do a quick push through like mid, and they would have someone set up already with that map control because they weren't able to force anything off of A without the raise.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was like a really big mistake for them. And version 1 played really well off of it by not overcommitting on A, but rather just like owning the rest of the map while they like sat there and looked at A.
I also like the fact that, or not like, sorry, that's the wrong way of putting it. I also think that FaZe's lost to Sentinels repeatedly in Masters, the 2 big 0-3 losses that they sustained, have provided a little bit of a blueprint to other teams of like what the correct things to do are in terms of themes when you're playing against FaZe. And I think that the way that V1 controlled A when they were on their attacking half, it really countered that FaZe aggression. Normally the FaZe A aggression on defense is so powerful. If you're going to try and take A, they're pushing into you, they're trying to duel, they're trying to wide swing on you, and it's just ruined every team other than Sentinels. And I think that V1 had a bunch of rounds on their attacking half where they just controlled A in the first half of the round, waited for Corey to overextend and push up to like the gate area, and then they just kill him, take the pick, and move on in. And I think that just absorbing of the aggression was a key principle for them when they were playing their attacking halves, especially on the Icebox, which has been a really difficult nut to crack for people to play against FaZe. I think this is going to be the start of the fall of the honeymoon period for FaZe. They are going to have to... I don't think they can just rely on what worked for them previously. They're going to have to modify something in some way, but I don't really want to see that be a comp modification. I want to see that be a playstyle modification, where they add more trap plays in, add more coordinated set plays into their defense.
I think that's one of the ways that you can like egg on a playstyle change is through comp changes in this game. Just generally. One thing to say about how many times these guys have played, I think like reading into, you know, how other teams are going to play against FaZe and how like, because this has been a 3-time ordeal now where they played in the open qualifier challengers bracket, right? They did it the first time in challengers 1, it was a 2-1 for FaZe. They did it again the next one, it was a 2-1 for FaZe. And then this time, finally, version 1 cracks it, right? And it's a 2-1 for them.
Sure.
I don't want to say that this was like, out of all the teams that got upset, FaZe looked I don't know if this is going to be the best way to say this, but they looked the best out of all the teams that got upset. Like they didn't crumble. They didn't like Gen.G, for example. They're like, well, we're just doing this weird shit. And then Sentinels were just look bad. And LG, who got eliminated before this, like, and there's more to this list, but FaZe didn't look absolutely awful in this game, in my mind. It was still a 2-1. It was still they still won a map, right?
Yeah.
I want to go through some of the rest of the bracket here as well. We had TSM's loss, right? TSM lose to Immortals. They just got curb stomped.
They didn't lose.
They lost twice to Immortals because they lost to them before that, and then they lost to them again. So, they were both bad.
I want to just touch on this as well, though, because in our previous episode we talked about Brax a little bit joining the team officially. I think that was like breaking news as we did the episode, and it's intended to be a 6-man roster, but they're just focusing on this 5 at the moment, and then they're going to integrate Hayes in later on. Apparently, there's this Reddit clip of Sabrosa saying telling his chat what the TSM special is, where they just change their comp so often that they can never nail down what they should actually be doing in the games. And he ends it by saying, why work on your mistakes when you could just make more, or something like that. Or why work on your mistakes when you could just make different ones, I think is what he said, something like that.
I mean, that's funny, given that in this game, they just made the same mistake every time, and it was some of the most stubborn play I've seen.
But when
they refused to, they refused to adapt. I couldn't. The fourth time I saw Wardell pushed up opping long on bind from the same angle and then getting droned out, and they try to just use one Phoenix flash to bail him out, and then he gets caught by all the Immortals utility. It's like, really, man? We're going. I mean. We're doing the same thing again. And I get it, because we've seen, listen, if there's one thing we've seen with that team before, it's if Wardell gets caught out somewhere or dies, it feels like he then has this vendetta where he has to make it work and prove that he's just going to get an ace. Like he's going to ace you on the next round. Yeah. He will do that. And it didn't happen in this game. Also, Immortals Haven defense with the Astra was so good. I really liked their setups, and TSM could not find an answer. I'm not completely sure what's happening with Nature versus Rossi. I was under the impression that Nature was going to not play because of some kind of personal issue, but then I had heard otherwise, that they were actually trying Rossi purposefully. I'm not entirely sure what the situation is there. I don't think it's really been made clear anywhere 100%. No. But he was playing an excellent game on the Astra.
He was, yeah. And also it makes this weird move where Chemicals moves over to play the Cypher.
But it's not weird, because that's what Chemicals was playing on Soar before.
Yeah.
They just swapped him over to Duelist. And I'm not mad at this.
It looks good. I'm
okay with Chemicals playing on Sentinel, because honestly, I think that against the top tier teams, when he was on Duelist, he wasn't finding the same impact. I don't think that he was ready to play Duelist at that level. And I think that was one of the issues whenever they made it deep in the tournaments as of late. And I'm also not mad at them trying this Stani on Jett Duelist theory.
Yeah.
Because
he was opping.
The two players who have always been consistent for Immortals have been Stani and Gangsta. And if Stani can find value being a Duelist for this team, and they can just have Chemicals finding value as Sentinel where he originally began, I am okay with all of that. I really like their defensive setups on Haven. Honestly, at some points on Bind, they were kind of just like, it felt like they knew they had already won, and there were some rounds where they were just kind of throwing because it seemed like they felt like they already won. But I don't know. You guys want to say something about TSM? What is your feeling?
I feel like I've never seen. I felt like when we made those comments about C9, when we said ponderous, I felt like CSM was ponderous at points during this match as well. Where like Wardell would be the one lone scout, like he'd be out opping some crazy angle, and then he would die, or he'd be looking for frags, and then the rest of TSM would all be conga lining through the map, and nothing would be happening. There were times, especially on Haven, oh my god, they just sat and they literally had never had any map control at all. They just sat and spawned for like 45 seconds. And then they would try to like dry push an angle after. They would try to dry push like Garage or something after like 45 seconds into the round. It was rough. They did not have a lot of confidence, it felt, particularly after Bind. They had like no confidence.
I'm still of the same mind as what I said last week when we were talking about Brax, right? This is a team where they have really, really, really good players in Wardell, in Sabrosa, in Drone, and the other guys too. Like they're just not enabling them, and they're not riding on the momentum that they should be, right? Wardell shouldn't be hunting for an ace by himself to make that momentum happen. They should be enabling him in some way and having somebody who is there to get them into that mood. Because if they don't, then they're never going to get there, and they're going to end up just flumping the entire time they go through.
I just look at this round. This is such a classic round, I felt, from Haven in particular, where like TSM are in spawn the entire time. They've lost mid, lost a pick, and now we're all going to dry push a site with no info.
Yeah, I mean,
and
they just grouped up. Yeah, I remember this. They just group up and try and hit C. And every time they hit C, they got destroyed by the Immortals utility at the end of C long. They just had a gravity well, a cage, and a trip all on that little entrance. How you can't? They just could not get past that. But also, they never adapted. This is like when you're saying the thing that Sabrosa said, it is a funny line, and I also get obviously what he's getting at because they do change their comp constantly, and there's some positives from this one. Drone on Sova, I'm glad they went back to that. Honestly, I like him on that role, but within the game itself, the micro of just the match, when you watch them and their failure to adapt and just try and they're just banging their heads against the wall like, well, we're on attack. All right, Wardell, buy an op again. We'll save up. We'll get you an op, and we'll try to make it work. I mean, the times are changing when you see Tens and Wardell buying ops as Jett on attack haven, and both of them just struggling to find a crumb of impact. Yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
I think that's because they have no depth, though. It's because they change their comps so often. They can never build depth. They never have any idea what they're actually doing. I haven't seen a group of people so lost in a game, in the world, for forever. I mean, they're like the Israelites wandering the desert for 40 years. They are lost beyond belief. These motherfuckers need Moses. They need Moses out here. They don't have an idea of what they want to do. They are just... They're searching for an identity. They're searching for a comp. They're searching for any depth. Brax is not the right player to inject creativity into your team, in my opinion, which is why I thought that they might transition Cutler back over to playing Sentinel and have Brax play some different role for them, either the smokes or the duelist, because at least then you're trying him on something new. You're not just trying him on his most static lurky position. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, they are so lost.
You have to I like the visual cue.
Thank you.
To signify loss. But for me at this point, I feel I like Drone on Sova. I think that's something we talked about before as well. I do like Drone on that role.
That is good.
Also, if Sabrosa is going to be on this team, I think he needs to be the smoke player.
Yeah, please don't have him play the
Phoenix.
The Phoenix. Because also, you saw in Haven, there were times where his team was attacking A, and there was multiple rounds. I think there was only 2, but there was multiple attacking rounds where he was trying to lurk through B as a Phoenix. That's not... this isn't the right role for him, and it's just obvious as soon as you look at one match from the top-down point of view.
Those two things need to be set. And then if Wardell is going to continue on the team, which he should, obviously, there needs to be... I think you need someone with a better overarching idea of how they want the game to be played, because it feels to me, at least, that he's just saying, I'm going to op B long again. I'm going there again. I'm going to kill them this time. Like, that is just his mentality. Because if you're the in-game leader, I mean, if a thing doesn't work 3 times, you're going to do it again? I mean, and sure, it's like there's something to be said about on some of these situations, he just missed a shot. But come on, you can't be so stubborn as to just keep doing some of these things over and over.
I mean, they're pre-aiming your position. Yeah. You have Astra Stars behind
you.
And
this is the only level of utility support they were ever trying to give him was one flash from Sabrosa on the Phoenix. Yeah. Again, like, there was never a round where they're thinking like, okay, we'll put a star down in long. I mean, even just the most basic thing, like we'll put the star down in long, we'll pop a smoke, and Drone can shoot the arrow over it, and Sabrosa can pressure, see if we can get a pick there. Meanwhile, Wardell, why don't you op and shower this round and just hold, like, there was just never. It's just stubborn. Stubborn is the word for it, and I feel that they need to have those roles, and then they need to have a leader who's going to actually put the players in a different direction and because I think they're just playing to their own vices in some of these situations.
Sabrosa's comment makes me think that they're growing frustrated with it though as well. I mean, you can't be TSM and win half of the Ignition series and not be frustrated about it too. Yeah. Like he's publicly saying that it's like he's making a joke of his own team that they can never figure out what they actually want to do in order to progress.
But the problem is they have, I don't. They really they just jumped out the window and signed Brax, and I'm sure Brax is getting the giga bag from TSM.
Yeah.
Is Brax going to be the answer? I mean,
no.
It just
Well, they're
it
going back to
doesn't
Hayes
seem like
next
it.
week, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, don't worry, they'll just swap in Hayes.
Like, you know
So
who
he's
they
gonna play Viper.
who they actually need to be looking to get is like Rossi, for instance, who just boomed them. 17-year-old in-game leader with interesting Astra setups. I mean, that is who they actually
They
need.
pull a Dignitas.
Yeah.
And then they just drop their team? Is that what you're saying?
No, but, but
let's-
genuinely, they need someone with fresh ideas.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Dignitas as well, because they played against, or rather, they didn't play against anybody because they dropped their team.
They have no team.
Their name was Rice. Their name was Rice and Meatballs, and they played against 100 Thieves as well. So I just want to very, very briefly touch on that game that happened as well, because Dig also had a decent performance where they knock out T1. Sorry, I'm going to keep calling them Dig. They're called Rice and Meatballs. They were just a pug for this one Challengers one. They're no longer a team anymore. They picked up Koala Noob, but as soon as they leave Dig, they have their best tournament performance since Pop Flash. Like this actually was a decent performance from them. They looked good in the 100 Thieves loss as well. So
Dude,
unlucky. I hope the players actually have success.
I mean,
somewhere.
they brought in. I feel like Koala Noob was, is he IGLing for this team? Who's IGL for this
Def.
Rice and Meatballs? Is it
Def,
Def?
it's Def,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, interesting. Okay.
Definitely.
I know. I was about to say it and I stopped. To get this guy off the fucking show. I gotta say, one thing I took away from this though, good for Maka. He gets dropped by Dig. He got his fucking stocks way up in this game.
Yeah.
He
Koala
was
Noob also looks really
performing.
good. In their previous game, Koala Noob was pounding as well.
Yeah.
I think 100 Thieves just looked consistent here.
Yeah.
The swap from Ethan to Sage seems like it's a good idea.
Absolutely. I mean, that immediately, it's one of those it's a small switch, but you could immediately see the level of comfort on both players go up, and both of them were having more impact on each other's roles now, or Nitro's original role, rather. I mean, I even think in regards, not only just the impact in terms of getting kills, but Ethan's utility, just small things, but it was just better than Nitro's on Sage. I don't know if that was things they came up with as a team, like, okay, Ethan, you should be putting your walls here, and this is when you're going to use your slows here, or if it was just Ethan. I don't know. But either way, they were getting more value out of the Sage utility with Ethan on it, and he looked more comfortable getting kills on Sage. And Nitro's Omen is, I mean, he might be the best Omen in NA when he's on.
Oh, he definitely
Omen.
is the best Omen
So,
in NA. I think,
yeah, he has to at least be up there in like the top, whatever. I mean, yeah, he probably just is. I can't even think of another person. He probably is. So just that small comfort switch genuinely made quite the difference. Like the defensive setups with Ethan and Asuna holding on A, it was just, they were so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the 100 Thieves?
Yeah, I think when we talk about Ethan switch to Sage, just he feels more free. We're saying he's better or whatever. He feels more free, just because like he's not stuck in these strats where Nitro was, where he has to use his wall to get out of B, or he has to use his wall in this specific way. Ethan he's putting up these one-way walls. He's doing these random pick walls and stuff like that are really exciting. And I think just the battle sage has finally started in NA. Right?
The battle sage.
The battle sage.
The battle sage.
I watched a video. He posted a video of it was kind of cool because there were the highlights from the game, like the comms from 100 Thieves.
Oh, really?
And that was in the title. It was like Ethan fragging in VCT, and then like the star battle sage?
Question mark?
Losing my mind. But looks good on Sage. So
okay, the last team that I wanted.
Steel was still opping, by the way. So
yeah, Steel was changing it around though as well. Like he sometimes had the Odin, sometimes had the Ors.
There it is.
I mean, it's
Wow.
Wait, they're doing the
background
YouTuber face with Reyna, or was it with Jett in that one? They have Jett do the YouTuber face.
That is
Ethan and
hilarious.
Nitro
Actually.
dominate. That's
Wow.
full
funny.
Fortnite. Let's
Wow,
go.
this is yeah, that's a channel.
I mean, this guy's really putting in the work for this YouTube channel. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Battle.
Dude, it's good. I'm telling you, these comms videos are going to be the future of like content in the pro scene. They are so good.
Yeah, they are. These are pretty entertaining.
Yeah, we've
Like,
got a comms video.
CS
that we're
was
talking about
lacking
later.
on this shit. Like this should have been like the way to go. Finally, like Elysian CS is starting to do it too because he's recognizing his friends getting some they should have been doing this from the start because they don't have to do anything. They just record and send it to an editor. It's over.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. The last team I wanted to do a check-in with is Sonics, because they're the team that have come over from Oceania, the best team in the Oceanic region, and they played some big teams actually this week. So I wanted to just kind of do a recap back through the games that they had played. They started off with that game against Sentinels. Well, actually, even before that, I suppose, they played against Cloud9 White, who are a pretty notable team in and of itself. That game, I saw differing reviews from the public, because the first map, they kind of stomped Cloud9 White. It was 13-3. But then I believe the second one went to OT, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 14-12. So I saw some people being like, oh yeah, they easily dealt with Cloud9. I'm excited about it. And I saw some other people saying, you went to OT against Cloud9 White or Megalol. They're never gonna do anything. And then they go into the game against against Sentinels as well, and they have an all right performance, but I felt like they weren't really in a position to win the game at any point. Particularly, I suppose they were in the lead at the half at Icebox, but I didn't feel confident about them even to be able to secure the Icebox win. But I want to hear your thoughts as well. Just from that single day's performance of their run through Challenges 1, what were your guys' thoughts on the Sonics performance?
At first, they came out strong. They were really, really good. But I just knew there was some of these rounds where it definitely felt like they had nerves, right? I don't remember the specific player. I think it was Dizzy or something like that. They were missing shots, and then all of a sudden they'd pop off. And I'd be like, wait a second, these guys have some serious skill. They brought a new way to play on Icebox that Sentinels hadn't really played against since the Andbox and Poach days with what was it, Viper?
They had Viper, and they had Viper was their smoker. Yeah. And they were still playing it was an EU comp pretty much that we saw a lot in EU with the Viper, the Sage, stuff like that. They did have double duelist.
Yeah.
This is the T1 style Icebox as well. It was nice. It was nice. But definitely felt like they started to, I don't know, they just lost the stuff that was really getting them there. There was a point in time where they were definitely clearly in the lead and everybody was starting to get hype. And then it just went away. And the second map just went away completely as well. So I thought this was a good place to rate them. I was like, okay, cool. They probably can contest if they are given a little bit of time. They probably can contest against some of the top teams in NA. But right now they're mid-tier T2 to high-tier tier 1. And then Sentinels went on to play BBG. And then I was like, I don't know what the hell to rate these guys at all anymore because of how they played.
I was definitely impressed by some of the individuals. I think that Bob looked like a very solid player.
Fucking love that guy's name,
Bob.
Just Bob.
But he is a really solid player. He had a really nice game on the Viper. It just fell apart in the second half. They didn't. I felt that they didn't really have a good read on Sentinels and where they were actually going to finish their executes. There were a lot of rounds where Sen just were able to kind of just waltz into B for free.
Yeah, because
Sonics just were they were under the impression that these A hits were going to kind of come in the heavy A hit sort of style, but no, Sentinels were abusing that throughout the half, and it kind of fell apart. But it was still a pretty solid attacking half from Sonics, and it was one that showed me they do have some legs, that I think they could go somewhere with a bit more time. They were playing in one of those NSG tournaments as well, and they'll have more time to get used to playing against these higher level teams. I think that sort of how we felt about looking back, those brief watching them in Australia has kind of panned out, where it looked like they had some really good skill, but in regards to the team play, there's some progress to be made, and I am confident they can make it though. I still think they can end up in a place, or rather, I do think they could end up in a place where they're around that top 12-ish NA, top 10-ish NA. And I think that would be a good result for them. And I think it's a very achievable one.
Yeah, I think I like that they have some good ideas as well. They're willing to play the Viper and the Sage here on Icebox and try to like do some things that a lot of NA teams weren't doing. Still, I think they're going to be willing to roll out some different compositions that NA is not typically playing, but it's definitely a current team diff between them and any of the top teams, and that will improve over time. I mean, if they actually do have the skill, then if they spend some time in the region practicing, they'll probably end up getting a lot better, because they didn't look abysmal. I think they had like the really abysmal split, but before that they looked fine on Icebox. They looked solid versus C9 White. So I do think there's like room for them to grow.
Right. And apparently the reason that they chose split was because they thought Sentinels were just too gun on Haven, and I don't exactly know what the thought process was there. They actually have a really weird Haven composition where Sonic's like to run the Viper.
This round is sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, this was a cool round. But yeah, I also felt though from watching this game, even right from the beginning when Sonics were winning, I was looking at TenZ again, and this is where I started thinking about TenZ having a bit of a nightmare of a tournament, because he was just getting pounded, like making such terrible decisions when he was on defense at the beginning of this. Like I said, he started something like 4-13 in terms of his KD, and that wasn't just because he was like taking good duels but whiffing. He's like wide swinging to open himself up to 3 different angles, and then he can't find the kill on the first guy, and so somebody else kills him from a different angle. It's just, those aren't smart fights to take. You can challenge an angle aggressively without wide swinging and opening yourself up to like 3 different angles. You can try and smartly play aggressive on defense without being that bold or disrespectful to your opponent. And he just got punished repeatedly. And yeah, I feel like this again was not the A version of Sentinels. And so I find it hard to give Sonics all the credit in the world here for even closer to 10. They went on to lose against Renegades, but they made it to the finals of the next tournament that they were in. I can't remember the name of that tournament.
That was yesterday. It was the weekly NSG thing. That's like a qualifier for the monthlies.
Right.
Okay.
But they took a map off Renegades. It was close. Apparently that game was extremely entertaining as well, but I didn't get a chance to watch it yesterday. So I'll probably go back and take a look at that. But it does seem like Sonics are settling somewhere towards mid-tier 2 right now. But we haven't seen them play against everybody. So that could definitely change.
Don't forget too. Sorry, go ahead, Wyatt.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, mid-tier 2, but probably with more potential than any of the other teams in tier 2 right now, just given that they're actually playing against better competition and can improve at a more rapid rate.
Yeah, maybe.
That's true. I also want to point out, like, they haven't had that much time in NA yet. Like, this is literally what their first week in NA. Like they landed like maybe last week, and now they're playing. So they're settling in, and they have plenty of room to improve for sure.
Definitely. All right, well, let's move on to a little bit of team news. We've got NR.
Okay. No, that's fine.
What?
Okay.
What did you want to talk about? You wanted to talk about NRG Xset because it was the only good game of the tournament. Is that what you said?
No, I was going to say, well, it is just amusing that Xset are just no one. It's so sad that just no one cares. They're one of the most consistent teams at the moment.
Yeah.
No one cares. No one will acknowledge that they're a good team. And we're not going to either. I was going to talk about T1.
You're going to talk about T1? Okay.
Why T1? Just because they make you sad?
It's so unfortunate. People just... I don't understand why people just won't acknowledge the existence of Xset.
I think Xset and NRG, though. Xset and NRG are both on a similar level where they're like...
Yeah.
Somewhere around... They're within the top 8 in NA right now. Around the bottom level of the top 8 in NA. I think, and I don't think it was that surprising whoever won that game. I think that was just a close game.
I'm just not talking about the game in general, but just, or rather, not just about that game, but in general. Like Gen.G, sure, they made 3rd. They slipped to Cloud9. FaZe, hot run, out to version 1. Exit, they make it again. The consistency is there. First qualifier, make it through. Honestly, they're probably going to make it through the first challenger as well.
Probably, yeah.
And still.
Do you want like the
people will be
dedicated
rating them at
exit
the bottom.
5-minute block every day? Every
We got the
podcast,
Sonics one.
we have to
No,
talk about
I'm-
exit for 5 minutes
It's just
at least.
somehow they have just become the team that will never be acknowledged. And it's a tragedy. It brings a tear to my eye. So anyway, T1. The T1 played against the Rice and I don't know if I was wondering if we just wanted to talk about this T1 losing to Rice and Meatballs at all.
Lord Almighty,
because it's
bring
T1.
it up.
Bring it up, Kurt. Show them the comps.
God.
Please, can we go to the comps here, Kurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Because
this
Spider,
is a double controller.
Spider back on the Omen, Skadoodle back on the Astra, Automatic
Back
on
on the
Phoenix.
Astra.
We're playing Haven. Josh doesn't want to look at this. His poor eyes. He doesn't want to look at this comp. This team, I don't understand the desperation from them to just.
They need Moses. They're another team that needs Moses. They're lost in the desert, and they need a guy.
I don't understand what the idea is behind. What is the desire for Skadoodle and Spider to never succeed? They've signed them, but they don't want them to succeed. I don't get it. I don't get the Spider and Skadoodle not playing duelist thing. I don't know what Skadoodle wants. I don't know what his heart desires. But did he enjoy? Does he fondly look back on the times of carrying this team on Jett? Does he not want for that again? Does he not want to play Jett? Does Spider not want to play Phoenix or Raze, or Jett for that matter? Skadoodle was good on Raze too. And then they switched to the no duelist, but then they have the Cypher and Automatics playing Phoenix now, and Automatic finally started looking okay on the Omen before. What's happening, Josh?
It's just a tragedy. I mean, it's a tragedy.
Are we, can I ask a question?
I think it's the old CS players are getting lost. I think the T1 and TSM stuff, I think it's just that those guys don't, I don't know, they don't get the game as well.
Do you think
as
they're just
some of the other
offered
teams.
too many choices? They're like, before it's like, okay, we have like X number of agents, they all do this, but as we expand the agents and change the meta a bit, you're going to be like, this is just, they have too many flashing buttons and choices now for the CS guys. Is that where you're going with here?
I mean, have you ever been to Subway? And
First of all, yes, I have been to Subway. So
when
I'll answer that.
When I first went to Subway, I was overwhelmed by choice. I mean, when you walk in and they ask you what bread you want, I'm like, I don't know.
Why are you
Bread?
describing it as if you've lived in like a
Welcome to
Soviet
the land
era
of free,
like country,
motherfucker.
and like, you see a grocery store for the first time, like what? There's so many
Subway is not a
options.
normal
No, but
grocery store.
it's
It is
tough.
not normal to require 3 to 4 people to make you a sandwich with
Well, it should-
72 different options of things that you can put in. I don't think that
Tuna.
much about my sandwiches.
Black
Do you
Forest
go to like
ham?
the
What am I
which
getting?
Subway do you go to where they have
This is some
4
bougie
people
ass
making
Subway,
it?
like,
4 people
really?
making your Subway. Is this like the super Subway? I can't believe there's 4 people making your sandwiches.
Yeah, the first one gets the bread, and then they pass it to the meat person, and then they ask you for the meat, and then they pass it to the vegetable person, and then they pass it to the
The
sauce
Subways
person.
I've been to have only had like 2 people.
My Subways are empty, bro. They are desert towns.
Josh has to show his tax return to get into this exclusive Subway. That's how you get in.
It's like down in the basement. They have a bouncer.
I think the T1 and TSM players are both paralyzed by choice. It's a buffet in front of them, and they can't
You know what's
decide what
funny?
to,
I
what to eat.
remember. I remember an interview. It was in like the midsummer. I believe it was the TSM coach. He had said something like, "Sentinels are going to fall off because their Overwatch players aren't going to be able to continue as the game goes on because of their lack of fundamentals. But the CS teams with fundamentals are the ones who will be able to
That doesn't make sense.
stand the test of time." As if, yeah.
I don't think that
I
makes
mean,
sense.
that's
I
just
just-
what
I
we
just
call the
remember that
old
being-
CS.
I think that makes sense
hubris.
in CS in general, but not in NACS.
I just remember that. I remember reading that in an interview, I believe, on the Spike, sometime during the Ignition series, and well, it didn't really pan out. Hasn't really happened so far.
But we've seen that story played out in other games before. You always have what we consider the gaming elite, the gaming nobles that come in, whether it be Quake players or the CS players, and like guys we're just so much better. We're blue bloods.
We are.
You guys,
Yeah.
you've never even tasted an eco round before. Myself, like I know everything about it, and then they lose, and that's just what it is. I mean, I don't even. That was a really
maybe find
that is
article,
aged
Kurt.
poorly. That's aged poorly. That comment.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
some of the
aged quite
CS players
badly.
are still doing really well. It's just
Some have,
yeah.
but I would, if you consider where we were at early in the game to now, and where the trajectory is, like in another year from now, I'm assuming even more of the CS guys are going to be moved or like to different positions, because you're going to have the 17, 18-year-old Valorant crackheads that were born in the pit of ranked that know everything about the game, and they're going to be taking their spots, because that's how it works for every new game.
Yep.
That's it. Like there's a couple guys that'll be really good because they're just gaming monsters, but the reality is you're always going to be overtaken by those that were in the womb, getting ready, understanding the rotations and the ults. That's always going to happen.
If I were to give a piece of advice to T1, it would be this. Put Skadoodle on Jett, put Spider on Raze/Phoenix, Daze play Sova, Curry play Sentinel, Automatic play Omen. I don't see a way that roster with that comp could perform worse than what they're doing here. There's no way, right?
I don't think
Can
so.
they
I mean, I
perform
think
There
better?
probably isn't.
I mean, they're trying to reinvent the wheel. They don't know how to ride a bike yet. Like, they have to...
Wait.
You know what I mean? I'm trying to say...
you need a wheel to ride a bike. The ability to ride a bike is not a prerequisite for reinventing the wheel.
I get where he's going for,
Well, you see
because
what
it's
I'm
like
saying,
they
right?
get on the bike and then they look down and are like, what is this? How am I supposed to move? Because I don't understand what's there at the bottom of my feet, you know? Like they're looking at some unknown object. So to be that, okay, I get where he's going for.
That was a
That
banger.
implies that you need the ability to invent things to use them.
No.
When
I'm
I
just
drive
saying-
a car, I don't understand how to invent an engine or a spark plug.
Yeah, you're thinking about this too deep. People
But you
understand.
understand how the engine works. You put gas in, it can bust. They're like the wheel. He's saying T1 doesn't even understand how the wheel works.
Like,
They're trying to figure out what's the point
Yeah,
of it.
what I'm saying
The
is
wheel just turns.
play a standard double duelist comp and just qualify for a thing, and then run 5 sentinels or whatever they're trying to do. That's all I'm saying.
Just play the game and win. Why don't you just win and qualify?
Just play something standard, qualify for the thing, and then run Cypher on Icebox with no duelist. Like, then do that.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's crazy, man. I just don't. I just come on. I really don't. I don't get it.
They're lost
It
and in need of a
hurts me.
GPS.
It hurts me. Also, I know this is something, I don't know if we want to talk about Astra at all, given that we got to see a lot of Astra play. We didn't touch on Envy at all. Mummy's Astra was really good. Immortals, Rossi's Astra was really good.
Yeah, very good.
And neither of them were running a smoke at the same time.
No.
T1 did. They were the one team. I think the one team. Maybe there's another that I didn't see. They were running an Omen and the Astra.
Yeah.
Seems pretty unnecessary, at least given how well I saw Envy and Immortals playing.
It's also, I don't think it's a
I think you can have
coincidence
just
that
Astra.
both TSM and T1 are trying to reinvent the meta and both failing. You know what I mean? Like
terribly. That's it.
TSM have been kind of, for the last, I don't know, the entirety of 2021, they've been trying different stuff to other teams, and none of it has worked out. And T1 are doing the same now. Like, they're going in a different direction to everybody else, and it ain't working.
I just want to know what was the logic behind running Astra and an Omen at the same time. Because to me, Astra is such a ridiculously flexible smoker with the stars and how you can maneuver them. So it's like you've just taken, it's like that picture of the person that's put in like another pool inside their pool. That's way too many pools. Like, that's just way too many. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, you have the most flexible smoker probably in the game currently, or at least at the very least fits 1-to-1 with how flexible Omen is. So why the hell do you need Omen and Astra? Like, what? I just don't get it. Like, that's just a really
it
odd
barely
choice.
gets you anything else. Like all the other
it's
double
just a
controller ones,
very
like,
weird
you get
choice.
Brim Molly and Viper Molly. You could play the post plan in a specific way. Like, it gained you something unique to that comp entirely. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Omen Astra.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
Okay.
I simply do not.
We'll end it on that note.
Yeah, I want to move on to the NA roster moves, though, because there's only a
Yeah.
couple, and they're not the biggest news in the world, but I think they merit touching on. One of which is NRG making a change and they lose their head coach. Jett. And when I say lose, I think they removed him, but I'm not 100%
Well, they said
sure.
mutually parted ways on Twitter. So it sounds like he was, wanted to leave as well. But also that could be a situation of like, you never know exactly what that means, right? Because your org approach would be like, hey, we want you to leave. And you're like, I'll leave.
He tweeted, he said, decide to step down as of last week. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
To me, that seems pretty clear that he decided to step down, but maybe not. Maybe it's like, hey, you suck. Like, let's get out.
I've had people. There are definitely been players. Not the same. This is once again not saying Chet did this. It's just you can't always trust every announcement at face value necessarily, right? Because it's just like, yeah. But who knows?
I just think that this one specifically because he mentions how he wants to go explore options back in CS, and he's keeping tabs on Valorant. I just feel like this is I personally can take this at face value. If you can't, then that makes sense. But
what do you think it means for NRG? I mean, they recently just lost to Exit, lost 0-2, didn't qualify, but they had a decent run in the previous Masters
the best
1
tournament yet.
But they still didn't really go as far as they would have liked to do. After the win over 100 Thieves, I think people were pretty high on NRG, and then they didn't actually make it to like an important step in the tournament.
Yeah.
So this also feels like with them not again progressing, that it could have been a move internally as well. I don't know. How do you guys feel about NRG for the future?
Honestly, I don't think this particularly matters.
Me too.
Though
Yeah.
It's always hard to say with a coach, and I can't speak as if I know what he was really doing for the team, but I don't know. I suppose just in the way of throughout NRG's trajectory, for most of it, it has looked like another one of those situations where they have no one behind the wheel of the car. It's just barreling down the freeway. And given that, it doesn't seem... All I know from that would be that he wasn't driving. So maybe they want someone who will have a big picture idea of where they want the team to go and what the direction should be. And it also seemed... I don't know, it's not... There was at least nothing within NRG to kind of trademark as like, that is the doing of a coach or leader in regards to their in-game
do you not think?
Style, unless you're looking at what, like...
I think they massively improved recently in terms of how they're
they have
macro
massively improved recently.
and like what they crystallized on, that like the comp that they wanted to run, the roles they wanted to run, and the style they wanted to play. It's a fairly recent thing. It's within like the last...
But that was also it was a catalyst of like them getting Android, right? And shifting around some roles a bit.
Yes.
So like who knows if that was really them making a concrete choice, or rather Android gets picked up and now everyone's able to shift and it just worked out really well for them, because it's tough to really tell what happened to that.
And at that time they did start, I mean, their utility and their team play was better than ever then. So I don't want to. I guess I don't want to sound like I'm coming across too negatively, because they were on a real high note at that point in time. And even in that tournament, they went out. They took a map off FaZe, and then they lost to Gen.G, which at the time felt like, oh really? But then Gen.G ended up making a pretty sick run throughout Masters, and so they played against. I mean, they played against what, 2 of the top 3 teams, and also beat 100 Thieves to not qualify. So that's. It was a good effort still, and they have a lot of potential. And
I don't think losing to Xset here was such a, like you said earlier, it's not like crazy. Xset's been a fairly consistent top team, right? So
yeah.
So I still think NRG are in a good position. I don't know, maybe honestly, if anything, it kind of feels to me like he just wants to go back to CS. I think he wants to be in that game. That's sort of what it looks like to me.
To me, I always struggle I struggle to put myself in a coach's shoes where the team is making so many roster changes, like constantly. They had the Infinite change, who's like benched for a while, then they brought in Android, then they brought in Tex, they dropped Shanks. Like that always seems to me like a really, really hard place to be as a coach, depending on how the situation is. Maybe he had an influence on the team, like on the personnel himself, but I don't know. It just feels like it's hard to have super value depending on what style you have. In my mind, I think Chet has always been like a personal, like a player developmental type guy in all of his CS stuff. So maybe that has been a factor. I don't think this changes anything.
also the coach that would have had to go to the GM, ask for the money for the buyout for Cola, paid the Bugatti for packing 10, then benched Cola as well, has to go back to the GM and ask for more money to buy somebody else. Like, it's been a roller coaster for NRG, but they have finally got down to something that seems to be decent for them. Also, also the head coach that picked up Shanks in the middle of his controversy, and I mean, we're going to talk about match fixing later on as well, but he's somebody where there's allegations within the scene, though they haven't been corroborated yet by any kind of large body. So who knows how that's going to end out. But yeah, it's weird times internally within NRG over the last 4 months.
It's never seen. Yeah, we've talked about it so many times, but it's just never seemed like they've had a concrete idea of what they want to do, what the direction they want to head in is.
Okay, well let's talk about SSG then, because they just dropped their roster as well. I don't have too much to say on this, so I'm going to leave the floor kind of open. Are we doing like a funeral? Like,
I think it should be sort of a funeral, because I kind of liked SSG. They were always my team that in tier 2 that I always kind of rooted for, because I felt like they had some like really great moments at points when they're on broadcast. They had some really cool stuff with when they were playing Phoenix a lot with Boostio, and how they played around that comp that I thought were really cool, that no other tier 2 teams and then any some of the bottom tier 1 like were not doing nearly as well with when they were playing a lot of Phoenix. But you know, they just didn't have the results. So I don't think it's too crazy that eventually they've made some moves, because if you're a tier 2 team and you haven't gone deep in a tournament and you haven't, you know, really had any great results in the past, like 4 or 5 months now, if not longer, then, you know, sometimes you just got to make a change.
Did they deliberately make this announcement impossible to read? I mean, I cannot read that. That's the font is so squashed. We would like to say thank you and farewell to our Valorant roster, as we've made the difficult decision to part ways with Boostio, Roka, Profi, and Ranger. We wish the players and coaching staff all the best and wish them success for the future teams. Okay, very default, but okay. I like that they do it at least, because some orgs don't.
Yeah.
That fucking blows.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what Connor said. Just echo the same sentiments. These guys have been around for a while. If they weren't bringing the success that Spacestation was seeking from their roster, then is what it is. There's still some talented players, though, and I'm sure all of them should end up on teams, genuinely. So
yeah. Okay.
Dignitas also immediately looking for new players, by the way. I don't know if that was somewhere on the docket, but like,
I don't know what's going on with that org.
They just as soon as they drop that roster, and I can't remember how they phrased it exactly. Like, I don't remember what they phrased.
Teams generally say like stuff like Space Station does, where it's like, we're looking for new initiatives, and like that just that's open to anything. Like, initiatives is a very broad term, but yeah.
But Dignitas just immediately looking for new players,
new initiatives.
LF team.
I think it's the symptom of just like, well, we want to qualify for Worlds, so let's try to find a new team. At this point, it's kind of getting a little too late for that. So I think we're going to see more of this. I think we're going to see a couple more orgs drop their rosters, to be honest.
Well, you might see a couple more orgs drop their players as well, because the friggin' FBI is getting involved in the match fixing. And my God almighty, this has been something we've been talking about. And oh, by the way, Riot's also getting involved, but that is just immaterial as far as I'm concerned.
No. Riot, I'd say similar scale as the FBI, similar powers. They have a Riot gulag that they can put you into. So
we've been talking about this on this show since the ESIG report was announced that it was coming out in,
I don't know, that was
September, August, something like that.
Episode like 7.
Yeah, it was
6,
ages ago.
Yeah.
And I think the ESIG report was supposed to come out October 15th, something like that. And it's been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. They posted something about the Australian scene as well, because it was easier to kind of sum up and get out there. Yeah. But there was a recent interview that one of the lawyers at ESIG did with somebody who has a YouTube channel about competitive integrity in CSGO. And one of the questions was like, is there any update you can give us? Why is it taking so long? And he said, well, part of the reason is that the FBI is involved, and that scales everything up massively. You need evidence in place. It becomes a case of federal charges now, rather than us just recommending bans in games. that is monumental, right? That's huge.
I mean, that is quite the advancement from where we were at before, which was just speculating, I guess, as to like if things would carry over.
I mean, we were asking whether Valorant orgs would even bother dropping their players if they were done for stuff in CS.
We thought, you know, that seemed to be happening given Envy. Then when this kind of started coming into full swing, that was when Envy had dropped Calypso.
Poised got dropped
it's
as
no
well.
secret that it's no secret that Poised, Calypso, Marved and Shanks are like the top 4 people that are being talked about in this constantly. If you don't know why, it's because there was a clip on stream. I can't remember from how long ago. It was on Cooper's stream, who's an NACS player. Can't remember which player said it, but they just kind of matter-of-factly were like, yeah, Marved, Calypso, Poise, and Shanks are throwing games, and they're in a Snapchat group. And they just kind of said it on a stream.
Yeah.
And then
there's VODs of them.
There have been
just
sketchy VODs recently. People have been reviewing of
they're just drawing
Shanks,
dicks on the wall and stuff.
Yeah,
which,
Shanks looks at a molly on the ground, plants, and then walks into it and dies.
Yeah, which doesn't
shit like that.
It doesn't necessarily mean that is like evidence of this happening, because you need the money trail as well in order to really prove that anything was happening there. Like if someone just throws a game, but it's just because they can't be asked playing, that's not a federal charge. But it is if you have been approached by a betting website to deliberately rig games so that they can make enormous profit and they pass some of that on to you. Or even if it's the lower level version, like the guys on iBuyPower did, where they're just betting on their own games and betting skins on it and then getting the profit. But what we're talking about here is much larger, widespread stuff where the sites themselves, the betting websites, were reaching out to players and asking them to throw games and saying, we'll bribe you essentially to throw games. Which is, it's enormous, because that then implies it's incredibly widespread, it's organized crime, it's massive defrauding happening. That's where the FBI does want to get involved, because it's fucking, it's like, this is also coinciding with the start of legalized sports betting in the United States as well, something that hasn't really been a big thing in the US. It's enormous in the UK, so I always forget that it's not really that big in the US. It's still only legal in a handful of states, I think.
Yes.
But yeah, it's all kind of coming together at the same time.
I think you were pulling it up there as well, Kurt. There was a report recently, I think within the past week, of some players. There is just hard evidence. I wasn't sure if it was just chat recordings, audio recordings. It was audio recordings, right?
Yeah, but I think a lot of those, because there was definitely a huge amount of backlash on it was a bunch of players in the CIS region, right?
No, it was NA MDL players.
Okay.
Some of them do play Valorant. I know like 4Pack was on a team.
Joel's was as well.
Yeah. Not on any notable Valorant teams and not on really any notable CS teams, just, like lower tier MDL and Premier players. But that is the tier of players that are being primarily investigated in this. So it has already begun.
And also the fact that these stories are coming out implies that there will be some public announcement coming soon. Because they have asked journalists to hold their stories. These journalists have found evidence, and they've gone to ESIC, and who have then gone to the FBI about it. And the journalists are being told, well, please hold your evidence while the investigation concludes. And so they were saying that people like Richard Lewis and also, God, I've forgotten the name of the other guy, but there was another guy that reports for... Shit, it's a CS site, and I don't go to the CS site.
Is it Ryan at Rush B Media?
Yeah,
maybe it might have been that. I think it was like Dust2 something though, wasn't it?
Dust2.us as well. Yeah, those are the guys who posted the audio. Well, they didn't post the audio; they posted the transcript of those guys that Wyatt's referencing. And
right, and those are the kind of people that I think have been helpful during the investigations, because they're like people really meshed into the scene that have access to primary evidence, and so if they're now being permitted to share some of that with the public via their websites, via their journalist outlets, that implies to me that we're on the verge of something actually getting done.
So the ESIC guy said within the next 2 weeks, that was last week, that we'll have the report out.
Really? I didn't.
Yes.
I missed that. I didn't realize
He
it
said
was
that during that interview. He said
Right.
within the next 10 to 14 days we'll have.
Which implies at that point they've already all the evidence has been lodged and FBI.
We're not sure if it's like a partial report or it's like a full report or what. Like I
Right.
think it's probably going to be a partial report. I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, because
that
you're not
going to
release
FBI is about
anything.
to start charging people. Like,
Yeah, until FBI has
exactly.
Like that. And it is a very big deal, right? Because of the fact that it is literally, like you said, defrauding. And with gambling, because that's what betting is. That's what sport or esports betting is. You are gambling. And if you are essentially throwing matches like that, you are defrauding people and essentially stealing money. And that's taken very seriously. And you could go to jail for that. You can go to actual jail.
And I saw some people on Reddit. People still don't understand this, where they have a much more visceral reaction, a gut reaction of being like hating people who cheat and who are involved in like abuse outside of the game and this kind of stuff. Those things are serious. They absolutely are. But this is equally serious. This is a huge deal that you should not just lightly brush off as being, it's just a game though. It doesn't matter. This is enormous theft. If we're talking about widespread briberies from the websites, from the betting websites themselves, you're stealing money from people by throwing these games. You are illegally defrauding people of their money. That is massive. And it also implies a significant moral lacking on these players' parts, where it implies that there's other ways in which they would be happy to violate competitive integrity and not give a fuck about it, because clearly they don't care about the sanctity of the game. And if you lose the games actually mattering, you lose everything within the sport. So this is so important. And yeah, it's now got to the point where if the players had just owned up to it early on, they probably would have had a ban, which would have had a limit on it, a term on it. Maybe they might not have even been banned from Valorant if they had owned up to it early enough, or if they had served some of their time in CS, and they could be continuing with their careers, and they wouldn't have to be involved in this kind of mess. But because it's got bigger and bigger and bigger, and so much of it has been uncovered and hidden for so long, now you've got the fucking FBI involved. Like, you fucking idiots. You fucking morons. How can you look at what iBuyPower did, continue to do it, and escalate it to the point where now the FBI has to get involved? You fucking idiots.
Those iBuyPower guys have been waiting like damn near 7 years for Valorant to come out to be able to play again.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, these guys just throw some games, jump ship, here we go.
And I think it just speaks to like how naive a lot of the online community is when you talk about like, it's like, well, so since they threw a couple games, a year or two ago or how many years, like they should go to jail. And it's like, well, I mean, theoretically, if you robbed a bank a year or two ago, like you might go to jail, because you're stealing a bunch of things, right? And you're fundamentally committing theft and also violating everything else, like about competitive integrity. And people they just don't understand, because there's still the distinction. It's like, well, it's just a video game. Well, it's like, yeah, but there's also a bunch of money associated with the video game. There's real money here with the video game.
I mean, fuck it. Even if it was virtual money, even if it's like Bitcoin or skins or something, those are still digital currencies.
If it was Bitcoin, it'd be even worse, because you have all the crypto people losing their goddamn minds. They would have called down the NSA and they would be sending them to Gitmo and stuff like that if it was still open. If it was Bitcoin, but it's still like crazy how.
Well, I think they said Bitcoin. I think there was Bitcoin. Also said it's like Bitcoin betting syndicates.
Wow,
that's the language he uses. Betting syndicates.
I also want to talk a bit about Riot's involvement here as well, because Riot announced that they're starting their own investigation into match fixing, which is completely independent from the ESIC investigation. Apparently from, I know that, so Riot announced this officially. They posted something about it. And I think most of the community sentiment was like, good that they're doing this, but they're not going to find anything that the others aren't, because they've been working on it for years. Yeah, and they're involved.
There's no way they're not going to share the same info, right? Like ESIC's going to have to. There's no way.
But they said it was completely independent. But this report is actually really good. This is a report from Richard Lewis, who is, I mean, just knee deep in this shit, who's talking about the Riot Games investigation, and he's talked to some players who got interviewed by Riot to like get a feel for what Riot are even doing. Because if you're not working with ESIC, you just simply are not going to have the manpower to be able to uncover this fully. You're not working with law enforcement investigations, law enforcement departments. You're not working with betting companies. It seems like Riot are just interviewing players.
I think it's let's cover our asses here from Riot, right? Because
Yeah.
you already can't trust it's Riot investigating what's happening in another game, and whatever they find might actually be able to be harmful to the CS scene in general. I hope that it's just them basically trying to figure out what they want to do with whatever they get, right? Let's talk to the players. Let's understand what, hopefully they come forward and actually talk about what we did and try to make a decision from there, I guess. Because I wouldn't necessarily trust anything past.
Yeah, no, and I completely understand that as well, but I do think that it's kind of right for Riot to take it. I think at the very worst, this shows that Riot are taking it seriously. Because there was a thought process within the scene that maybe Riot would just wash their hands of it and be like, well, it happened in CS, it's not our jurisdiction, we're not the law on the internet. So yeah, I think even different people from different parts of the scene have different thoughts on whether you should really get a punishment from what you did in a different game prior. Yeah. What's the statute of limitations? How strict should you be on that kind of stuff?
Which is a silly argument because if you live in a different city and commit a crime, you can still be punished for the crime that happened in a different city. And it's no different than that with games, If you commit crimes, doesn't matter where you're at, you're committing crimes.
Certain countries don't have extradition agreements with other countries.
But do you want to be Pablo Escobar of video games? Whatever.
Yeah,
I saw people saying that. They're like, bro, they're going to extradite Marved. They're taking him out of Toronto.
Send him back to Valve.
Well, I'm pretty sure Canada and the US share they will do that.
I think
because they have very strong law enforcement ties between the countries. So.
It does seem like Riot are just trying, to some extent, they're letting the community know that this is not going to go unpunished, which is the correct decision.
Yeah.
For the reasons you were mentioning earlier, as to it devaluing the sanctity of the game generally. If I'm watching a player in a server who I know has fixed matches, immediately that game loses all value, really. Because presumably, not to say that they're capable of, it inserts the idea in your mind that they are then capable of defrauding the game in other ways.
Just the fact that we're talking about it at all already devalues it, because now we're us, even on this podcast, we're telling people that there's match fixers in the scene. Now that's a topic for them. They have it in their head. Just in general, cheating discussions always tend to lead towards people doing it more, and also people talking about it more, which just sucks all around. It just
I also want to point out that the FBI getting involved here is almost worst case scenario for Riot, because what Riot could have been in a position here where their interviews with players, they were incentivized to confess, because there was this looming threat of the ESIC report, and they could say to them, Riot could have specifically said to them, well, if you tell us about what you've done in the past, we'll make sure that you're not banned from Valorant for a huge amount of time. We can reduce ban sentences based on guilty pleas, essentially. Or now, if you're a player and you've got FBI breathing down your neck, I wouldn't be confessing to Riot. I'll tell you that. I might be trying to work with the ESIC report and work with the FBI in that sense and try and mitigate that as much as possible.
Confidential informant. But you're the CI.
Yeah, I'm not fucking gassing myself out to Riot about it. So I feel like the more serious this got, the less it was likely that Riot was going to be able to get anything done with their investigation, because people are either just going to clam the fuck up, or they're going to be actually...
They should be lawyered up at this point.
They should be lawyered up, and they should be, if anything... what's the word? What's the word that's used where you are going along with the report?
Cooperating.
Thank you. I was thinking collaborating, like they were YouTube.
Collaborating could work, but probably cooperating.
Yeah. If anything, you would want to cooperate with the FBI investigation and the ESIC report, because that's where the actual meat of the discussion is going to come from.
Yeah.
So any possibility for this to get neatly tied up in a bow and there just be okay, some players are banned from Valorant for X amount of years seems very unlikely at this point. It's going to be extremely heavy-handed, and then Riot's going to have to decide what to do with the people who weren't able to get what might be criminal charges against them. Like
because they're going to have similar results, right? Because if someone if you choose not to ban a player, but that player is now serving 10 years in a federal penitentiary, surely that wouldn't make any sense, right? So they're going to have to share similar results. Probably the only divergence there would be, right, is if a player that is not currently, that doesn't get any charges necessarily, but still there's a large amount of evidence to say that they might be a match fixer, then they could come out and be like, yeah, we're going to ban this guy for X number of years. But they're going to share the same overlapping
which,
things.
by the way, is also reasonable. If it gets to the end of this and they can't charge people they can't charge everybody for crimes, that doesn't mean that they all just get off scot-free when it comes to the developer punishments. Because there's a certain burden of evidence that you need when you go to a criminal court. But there's a lesser burden of evidence that you need for a developer to ban you from a game because there's a high likelihood that you did this. The criminal system is set up so that there's an enormous burden of evidence because the punishment is enormous, right? That you actually get charged for a federal crime. But when the punishment is lesser, like you're going to get 3 years, 6 months, whatever, you don't need overwhelming evidence. You don't need a fucking jury.
You get banned from a video game.
Yeah. So...
Yeah.
It's like the same discussion with people that end up getting suspended for certain stuff, and they're like, well, why didn't it become a criminal charge? Why didn't they go to the police? It's like, not everything, not all discipline needs to be legal in order for it to be enforced within video games. And I don't think that should be the burden that the community puts upon Riot, is that if someone got away with, if the FBI didn't find a crime, then you can't find one. No, if the evidence is shared from ESIC and it's good enough to be able to warrant a ban, it should warrant a ban.
And by the way, the targets for the FBI are probably not the fucking players. It's probably the actual Bitcoin betting places and stuff like that. That's who they want to take down first and foremost. Most likely. Oh, I don't even know if I could say most likely. I don't know shit about the entire situation. So, one also other thing to note is that there is precedent in esports globally of law enforcement being involved in esports match fixing cases. The most notable one is Korea with StarCraft Brood War and Savior getting literally was the best player potentially ever in StarCraft, and he went to jail for match fixing and literally ruined that scene and almost killed it. So there is precedent. We shouldn't expect this to be like, oh wow, well nobody's ever gone to jail for cheating in a video game or something like that. This has happened, and it continues to happen in many different esports too.
Yeah. I think once the report comes out, we'll have a much larger discussion about this.
I hope it finally does come out.
I mean, it should do.
I hope it's so juicy. I just can't wait to be juiced out on that bad boy.
I would not expect too much off of this first report, based on what I'm hearing from and what their actions have been in the past. I mean, with the OCE scene, for example, that wasn't necessarily the most juicy thing, and I think that's probably what we're going to get at first, right? It's going to be targeting, amateurs who are betting on their own matches and stuff like that. That would be my guess, but again, I don't know.
Okay, let's move on over to Europe, and we're at a decent time here. I think it's only been we've only got 30 minutes into the podcast or something. We'll be fine.
2 hours.
Yeah, 30 minutes in. We've got a little bit of news here over from Europe. Fnatic changed 2 players around. They've had some disappointing results recently, and they've decided that... So what they did was they announced that they benched Chak, and then they announced that they benched Mo, but then their GM came out and said that they had decided to remove a player and bench a player. So your guess is as good as mine who was who. I figure that they've removed Chak and benched Mo, but their wording was just bench for both, so I don't
in either case, for both of them, they said we're allowed to explore options, so they're probably going to go to different teams eventually.
There was also a report that came out, Kurt, if you are able to find it, that they've been trialing a range of different players, including Olofmeister from CS, which I thought was quite
It was by Nell, right? Nell?
I think so.
Yeah.
So a very reliable source. And they've been trialing a range of players. Do you think this was the right move to, first of all, for Fnatic to change players? and for Fnatic to change these two players moving forwards?
Dude, I think they had to make a change myself. I think they definitely had to make a change for Fnatic.
It hurts me so hard to see them make a change because I love this team. I found them so much fun to watch. Yeah, it wasn't the best to watch in the last challenge or in the last stage, and we didn't get to see this whimper in stage 2 where they end up losing to who? I think it was we mentioned it earlier on the show. In any case,
they lost to Alliance.
Mo has been a lot of fun to watch. Chak has been the guy who I've been like, man, this guy has got some clutch stuff in him, and he's played a lot of different roles as well. Yeah, and so it was Alliance, but they needed it. Quite frankly, the results are not there, and they need the results to change fast. Otherwise, they're not going to make Challengers 2 even. They're not going to make Challengers Finals even, and it's hard as hell in EU at this point to make this. We talk about how it's like. It's already the end days for the people who didn't qualify for challenge this time around in NA. EU has only 2 slots per challengers to go to the challenger finals, 4 total, because they have the CIS and they have insane. Turkey coming in. So like, out of the teams who didn't make it this time, there's only 2 more chances, only 2 of them, plus the guys who are losing from today's matches as well. Like,
God, that is nuts, and it's single win.
Yeah, it's
so they have
wild.
to make
good luck.
They have to go Hail Mary, like let's find the best players ever to even have a hope at qualifying for Worlds. And we're talking about that at this point, right? It's to qualify for Champions, the international tournament at the end of the year. And that's the goal for every org. Man. If they don't make it, Fnatic can be like, yeah, no, this isn't the roster. So
the EU scene is just so stacked right now. It is so stacked. I mean, I do think that they needed to make a change. There is it does feel unfortunate because I think the team had a lot of personality. They're a fun team.
They did.
And it made you want those 5 to win.
Yes. Exactly.
And it's unfortunate that they just ended up in these situations where they just kept falling short by so little.
I think Mo was the big surprise. A lot of
I agree. I think that surprised me.
I saw
think
Angel and Zipan tweet after Mo got released, being like, "What? Why would you release Mo?"
Yeah.
I think to read a little bit more deeper into it, when we did the interview with Boaster, something he was talking about a lot was that the guys from Fortnite, he had to really do a lot of work to bring them up to speed in terms of team play and fundamentals and that kind of stuff. And maybe reading between the lines a little bit, even if Mo is a great player at the fragging aspect, maybe there's some lacking there in terms of the team play or the understanding or something a little more intangible that doesn't quite show itself in the game itself and more shows itself when you're on the team. Or possibly they just wanted a specific player to replace him. I don't know. That one to me was a bit surprising. I would have expected them maybe to, I don't know, maybe to go for Mystic, I guess.
Mystic was rumored.
If you were telling me they were going to drop or bench whatever 2 players, I would have thought it would be.
Yeah, not that Mystic is bad though.
Mystic, not saying Mystic is a bad player, but you would just, I think you would. That would just be the.
I would have assumed that Mo was fairly safe and Doma was fairly safe and Boaster's inside the team. You know, it's like Boaster's the guy making the decision, so it's not going to be him. Doma's the star player, and then Mo seemed like, at least from the outside, also, the secondary star.
Boaster's fragging has been good.
It has, yeah.
He's been playing well individually.
So the 2 players, the players that they were trialing there as well include Olofmeister as well. As far as I'm aware, Olof's career kind of fell off a cliff since he joined FaZe, did it not? But I have only been following it very tangentially. I haven't really been deep into CS.
Yeah, I haven't been deep in CS the past.
It was injuries that Olaf
got. He had a wrist injury, right?
Before he signed to FaZe, and then he signed to FaZe, and then the injuries cropped up again, I think. And since then, he hasn't necessarily been the same, but he's still been fucking good. Like, he's still been good in the grand scheme of things. Like, he's still better than a lot of guys in CS. And
we're talking about a player that was best in the world at his peak.
He's a legend of FPS gaming. Yeah, I mean, he was the best player at a time when Fnatic
were winning all of the majors. When they were in their
dominant era. So there is something cool about that if he's on Fnatic in Valorant. Also, these are the kind of moves that I would like to see for European Valorant.
Yes.
To help the scene. obviously, if he hasn't been playing the game enough, or if he's just not the right fit for the roster, I want to see the Fnatic roster succeed. So if he doesn't fit, don't force it.
Yeah.
But if he does, would be very cool.
Yeah.
And Europe needs more. Europe needs more star power to bring to drag in viewers, to bring more attention to the scene.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the challenges bracket actually then for Europe. And I don't want to go through all of it because there was some insane games that didn't even get broadcasted. So they're almost pointless to talk about because it's like, well, they lost, but I can't really tell you why exactly.
I was thinking about this the other day. Did you guys hear about, so a couple months ago, Team Liquid signed Yampy? Have you guys heard about that? Yampy. He played a bit of CS.
I've seen him stream. I've never seen him in a match though.
Yeah, it's interesting how that. It's funny how that's worked out.
That's really weird, isn't it? I've never
He's
seen him in a
Liquid.
match.
Did you know that?
He's on Liquid.
That's
They don't have
maybe you have to be
anymore.
part of Liquid Plus to know that info. You know, you have to be part of the subscription service because I haven't seen any footage of this. Maybe Steve from Team Liquid could tell me more if I pay some money to them.
Yeah. Okay. So there were some big upsets. I think we went over some of the upsets last week, didn't we?
No, because it was like the first 2 games had been played. That was
we hadn't played through the bracket at all. And
okay, so
we had just mauled it over no broadcast. And then by the way, all these play-ins, no broadcast.
Yeah, can we
what happened?
Can we take it? Yeah, here's what I wanted to look at, the round of 16 as well, to see, because there were some great games that were going on here, but they didn't get streamed. The only one that did get streamed, actually, was Boo from Giants, streamed his POV against Ascend, and they actually had a pretty close game there. It was a good game. But the other big takeaways, I was spamming F5 and looking at VLR. Liquid lost 2-0 to Guild. Their attacking halves were still tragic. I mean, if you just want to quickly click on that, Kurt, the Guild Liquid game, take a look at how many attacking rounds Liquid won across both maps. Haven, Liquid won 2, and Bind, Liquid won 2, and they were the pistol rounds, and that's how they lost. So cool. No other information to go on whatsoever, apart from the fact that Liquid still suck on attack.
Screenplay in Phoenix.
Yeah. I mean, the comps are interesting, but
can't see them.
Can't see them.
No. We have to feel like we have to look at portents. You know, we're dialing the knuckle bones to look.
Yeah. There was also a couple of other big games as well that weren't streamed, but I can't even be asked talking about them particularly. Let's just go on to the ones that
We'll talk about the future, or these.
There were some games that were streamed.
Well, these ones were important. Oh no, wait, no, these were these were seeding games.
No, that's seeds. Yeah,
these were seeding matches. Don't give a fuck about them. Move on. Next bracket, please.
I think you have to go to the top.
I think
it's the main event. We're in the main event.
Now we're in the main event.
The main event.
Things are being streamed single elim. You love to see that.
Now, by the way, that means
Heretics and Diffuse are playing right now, or Opportunist as they are now known.
Cool. I mean, Heretics lost for the first time on Haven. Wait, no, not for the first time, because they lost to Ascend on that map as well. But this is the... Wait, did they lose to Ascend on that map? I can't remember. I can't remember. I think after the previous Masters, there was no team in the world that had a win streak, like all time. But whatever. What I wanted to...
No, you're right. Haven, they haven't lost yet.
They haven't lost yet? Yeah, so this is the first time they've ever lost on Haven, is the opportunity.
Wow, that's crazy,
right?
Actually. Well, luckily it's being streamed.
In 2021, at least.
Right. They've actually never lost all time on Haven, too. Unless they lost to Ascend, but if you're saying they haven't lost in 2021, then they haven't. Yeah, that's actually wild. I mean, Heretics lost that seeding match against Alliance, too, but it's a seeding match. Who cares? Whatever.
Well, they kind of matter, though. When you're going into a single elim bracket,
they matter a bit. When you're looking at the level of talent that's available here in EU, who's the worst team in this 18 bracket? Vitality? Who's the second worst?
Alliance?
And Heretics lost to Alliance.
Yeah. But it's only a seeding game.
Yeah.
But also arguing that it matters 2 seconds ago.
I don't know, man. Here's the thing. EU's getting fucked again. I like that they're playing out the bracket this time, but last time in Challengers 1, they streamed 8 games. This time, they're only streaming 7, because that's how many matches there are in an 18 bracket. Shit sucks. But the games that have been played were kind of pog, actually.
Dude, that Ascend NIP game was so good.
Yeah,
like,
the Ascend NIP was amazing. That was like the one to watch. Guild Alliance was.
What the hell are we watching here, Kurt?
Oh, well. Okay.
Okay, let's start with Ascend NIP. As Kurt just pulls up all sorts of rotten tomatoes.
Just free promo for Bob Odenkirk.
Ascend NIP was the first game of the bracket. That's actually becoming a little bit of a rivalry, I want to say, because Ascend NIP played in the group stage of Masters. NIP that won the first time 2-0, even though it felt like Ascend were the better team. Then Ascend won 2-0 over NIP. NIP looked pretty poor in Masters. This time, they come out, they win 2-1. What were your guys' takeaways from this match?
Sky stocks.
Sky, yeah.
Sky stocks are going
100%.
through the roof right now in EU.
I think it's slightly more than that, because to me, this is double drone stocks going up like crazy. The only team that I really remember playing double drone, which is Sova Sky, has been Fnatic in the past, and Ascend on Bind, and only on Bind. Now we got this Existence playing Sky the entire time, and then we got like 3 different players on an IP playing Sova. Dude, their attacks have to be absolutely wonderful. The amount of space you get from both the Sky Dog and just the drone, just clearing shit, is insane. I think that's my takeaway, is that double drone is starting finally to be something useful.
They've also
it's insanely good.
The top European teams have stopped playing Sova on Haven a lot, which I thought was very strange. When I think of Haven, I think of a map where I want to be gathering information a lot on defense and on attack, actually, to be able to re-clear different areas as we're pushing around. And Europe, the top 32 teams have trended. Let me see if I can find my.
To be fair, NIP still did play Sova on Haven versus Ascend in this match, but in general, there's been a lot less Sova.
Yeah. But yeah, this match in general was awesome. It was actually.
I was also. I remember we had worried about Korea's flexibility moving forward, and he was playing Astra, and he was also playing Viper in this match.
Yeah.
And his Astra looked, and I feel like they're still learning like how to set up with Astra properly. Like the smokes were fine, but I feel like they still don't know how to set up with the gravity well.
It was basically all smokes. Like,
it was just smokes. Like the gravity well. I didn't see a lot of gravity well plays.
Yeah.
For Korea.
I actually really liked Korea's Astra. I thought they
really. I felt like they weren't using gravity well like a ton.
So what I noticed was that they were putting stars in areas to just stop Ascend's aggression. So Ascend are normally a really aggressive team on defense, right? Like CNED wants to push out of hookah. They want to push their Reyna up as aggressive as possible if they're playing that on a map. Like what made Ascend fantastic during Masters was the timings they would find to just push on defense and clear out areas. And I think that they really got stuck by a lot of Korea's stars. And it wasn't that they actually popped them into gravity wells, but you just have to respect a star on the floor because it can turn into a gravity well at any point. And then you're just fucked. And I noticed this on Bind because they were putting them outside Octagon and they were putting them outside Hookah, and it just stopped Ascend pushing outside of B. And I also noticed this when it came to Haven A short as well. Korea would always put a star inside A short when NIP were attacking. And if you're a defender who wants to swing at the bottom of A short or wants to play that tight corner with a shotgun or with whatever, if there's a star on the ground in front of you, you just can't. Because if you get stuck with a suck behind you, you're screwed. If you're playing the corner and you get sucked in, you're screwed. That whole area gets conditioned so that the defending team can't go there, just based on the star. So I thought that was like something very smart that NIP were doing with their Astra that I hadn't seen other teams do. Is just, you don't have to waste a cooldown, you just throw the star. And the star itself is enough of a deterrent.
I also think that, I mean, this is kind of off the topic of Astra, but honestly, this Haven match should have gone NIP's way. I felt like Ascend was getting outread, and they weren't really doing much against NIP to counter. CNED was getting mostly shut down. He wasn't really finding the opportunities that he usually is getting, and I think that's due to NIP's both Astra play and just in general really, really good comp. But it got saved by Cold Mensa. That 1v4 clutch towards the end of the game, and then the round right after that, that guy went crazy.
Yeah, Cold had a really, really good series.
If it wasn't for that, it would have been a 2-0.
It would have been tough. I also feel like Korea, when going back to the flexibility point, his Viper was really good though. Like his Viper, the way he played on Icebox was definitely, we've seen EU really, I would say, innovate the Viper style a lot more, obviously, than an A.
Yeah.
And the way that he played Viper was like amazing in that he was saving walls to and he wasn't even using them to set up like site pushes or like the counter site pushes. He was doing that occasionally, but a lot of times he would be willing to just like pop it early into a round, and they would take like really aggressive map control from his wall. So they weren't even trying to like fight sites as often as you would by saving the wall. Is that they would just go and they would like take the orb on Icebox, like on B site a lot with his wall, versus like trying to set it up for site.
Was that that round on Icebox attack where he just walked? Well, NIP was taking mid control very, very often, and they were just leaving one person in the back. I don't remember who it was, to hold on and basically completely confound that idea. Like, oh, if you go mid, you get pinched from all sides. They just left one guy, and they couldn't do that. So they would send Korea, like you're talking about with these cool ass walls. He went all the way up tube and then walled off all of kitchen.
Yeah,
all of kitchen aggressively, and they just
cool.
like win the round because they planted nests and nobody can peek out of kitchen. Nobody can even clear kitchen.
That was such a creative round for them as well, because they had JD playing Jett, and he updrafts and dashes to be able to get the plant on B. I've never seen anyone do that before. That's like a truly innovative, different strat. And I felt like NIP were throwing so many different looks here on Icebox. I mean, for starters, just to address the comp is radically different from what NIP were previously playing. They were playing Akukos on Breach. They were playing JD on Sage. They had, as far as I can remember, they had a zero duelist comp on Icebox.
They did.
And that was very weird. And NIP found some success by playing it in such a different, unorthodox style. But this is it's more normal, the comp, but they also still played very differently to how they would normally play. And I think it threw SEN the fuck off.
Yeah. It was an excellent series from JD as well. I suppose this series prompts the question in regards to the NIP Ascend matchup and NIP now being able to beat Ascend twice. How do we feel about Ascend moving forward now that they, obviously off the back of winning Masters, and now they have one chance left to be one of the qualifying teams?
I still feel pretty confident in them. I think they NIP looked really, really good in this, like with their new look, like swapping people of different ages. I mean, JD's Jett was fantastic during this too. Like NIP just looked really good. I feel like I'm not any less confident in Ascend moving forward. I feel like they should probably get top 2 in the next one.
Okay.
In my opinion. Yeah.
I think that Ascend are still a decent team, but part of the reason why I wasn't willing to rate them like number 1 in the world after they win EU Masters is because it was one tournament. We'd only see them get to that peak once. And also, it was by virtue of their players having unreal performances, the likes of which I don't think we're going to see reproduced. I would say that CNED's always going to be a great player. He's not always going to be Masters 1 CNED. That's like...
He was still excellent in this series.
He was still great.
And even on map 1, I think you were seeing... I mean, like, Balla was talking about before he left, like, Colamenta with the heroics.
Colamenta, I feel like, was like, close to performance, honestly.
Yeah, early on in that game as well, Bone Cold was just...
Bone Cold?
Pushed up A-long every round, and he was just finding 3Ks, like, back to back to back to back. It just seemed like he was...
Yeah, he was
holding...
good.
Like,
the team is still good.
Yeah, the team is still really good. I think one of the nice things from NIP as well was one of the things you were always talking about with existence on the breach, feeling like he had to be, it felt like he had to be the one doing everything.
Yeah, he's like dragging his team by a leash.
Which is nice because I think that just wasn't the case with him on Sky.
No. Or even when it was, the flashes are better to be able to play aggressive like that. Like you can pop flash yourself in a bit less clunkily than you can on breach.
But it was nice to see, it was honestly nice to see the JD Jett off the back of that too. I think that helped fix that issue to some extent, at least.
Yeah.
Over on Icebox.
Let's move on to another game then, because we had Guild play against Alliance too, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch this game yet, but I'm excited to take a look at it because I never know exactly where to place Alliance because they've had some great results, They've made it deep sometimes, but they haven't really been able to push it over the line. The victory over Heretics in the seeding match, I wasn't exactly sure about either because it's a seeding match and Europe doesn't normally play those. I don't know how seriously Heretics were taking it. But then they just got dicked here. I mean, I'm not... I don't...
Just a matter of fact.
Yeah, I mean, they just got... They did. But I haven't watched the game, so I don't know exactly what went wrong yet. I'm planning to review it today. But this was a 13-4, 13-6 is not close. Like, that is a solid performance from Guild against another decent team.
I haven't been able to watch it yet either, but
it's
nice to see Guild. At least it looks like Guild are starting to hit their stride. Essentially returning.
I was partially watching it. I honestly didn't see too much new from Guild. It was like Yassine just entering and popping off. Alliance has always felt like a scrappy team to me. Like they get into really chaotic situations and they thrive in them, especially when I watch them on Haven. But yeah, I mean, there was nothing crazy comp wise except maybe an Astra pick here and there. And they're running the same thing. Guild was running the exact same thing that they were running during Masters, right? So yeah, not much for me when I was just kind of watching on my second monitor at the same time as doing some stuff. So it wasn't necessarily a game that I'm like you must watch. Compared to the other one.
Yeah, the Ascendant IP was so good.
Let's take a look at the bracket then and just maybe run some preds for the rest of it, and that'll sum up our EU.
Our EU preds are typically accurate and
they're always very accurate. They're always 100% accurate. I mean, Heretics are playing against Opportunists right now. I would have expected that to be... I mean, seriously, I would have expected that to be a 2-0, or maybe Split would have gone the way of... Holy moly!
Well, I mean...
Here's the thing, though. Heretics actually without Nisao is a different team.
Heretics.
Yes.
Yeah, because what they were playing a lot of double duelist on like Split, for example.
Yeah, they're missing his Reyna.
Yeah, they really are. I can imagine that they really would be missing.
Oof, match point.
Is this the final round? Heck yeah.
Wow. Oh, let's see what's going on.
Just watch it right now.
Oh, God.
Do a little on-the-fly analysis.
Oh
my God. But honestly, this isn't like that crazy of a result to me still, because Diffuse is still, aka Opportunist, is still a very good team, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, look at that A site though. What is going on there?
Yeah, I just no clue.
They need something on the UI to indicate whose star is who.
Yeah.
It is just
awful.
Also for Viper Walls and for Astra's ult too, there's so many abilities where there's no indicator that it's
Lowell's
easy
playing
to tell.
Phoenix?
The double cosmic divide.
Is Lowell on Phoenix right now?
Holy shit.
All right, well,
this is...
I mean, that's it.
Mark
That's
the spot. That's where the spike's at.
That's actually it.
50 seconds.
It does.
Unless Para does something incredible.
The walls are going to come down.
It definitely feels like Heretics are going to have to reinvent themselves without Nisao being in the team. And it seems like they're going for very different comps here as well, though, right? Like, Lowell playing Phoenix is ridiculous. He is on Phoenix, right? I didn't just imagine that.
Yeah, no, he's on Phoenix.
Yeah,
that's it. Wow.
4-piece from Akuma.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, of course I predicted that Diffuse would be beating Heretics.
Of course.
Yeah, motherfuckers didn't want to put Diffuse in the top 10.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Diffuser,
but we had
a damn good
in
team.
the top 10 still. Though,
we did settle on
Diffuser are a very good team, but I think also there are questions for Heretics moving forward of like how they do reinvent themselves without Nisao being an available player for them. A lot of the comps that they would previously run are not available to them anymore because they don't have a player that's going to be able to do that.
Nisao wasn't a player on honest. Let's look at this. The only place he would have played on this match specifically would have been Split. Haven and Ascent he wasn't playing. And they won Split.
Yeah, but I think also they look like they're trying to reinvent themselves in terms of the comps that they're playing as well. Like when they're playing here, they're playing with the Astra, right? And it seems to revolve around that. And then also the comp for Ascent is wildly different. Like Avova playing the Astra, but then most importantly, Lowell on Phoenix is. I mean, that's fundamentally different.
I mean, that's massively different.
I'm surprised to not see that coming on Haven instead of Ascent.
Phoenix is just such a weird pick for Ascent.
They feel
with the
like
raid.
this because they feel like they like the Phoenix because of the synergy with Astra. And the fact that you can work off her stars and her cosmic divide like really well because abilities can still go through the wall, right?
Maybe,
So I'm wondering if they're feeling that there's a synergy there between Phoenix that there wasn't with
perhaps.
Sage.
Just when I think about Heretics on Ascent, I am thinking about Lowell on Sage, just owning B main at all times.
This is a big upset, though. This is a big upset. It's not quite the same as the ones in North America because Opportunists are a very good team.
Yeah.
But that's a sizable one. FPX Vitality is coming up next. Is anyone going to be bold enough to pred the Vitality upset?
No.
Hello? No. Any takers?
FPX are unbelievable.
No.
Any takers?
You can listen. Looking at this bracket,
the momentum.
FPX are unbelievable. You can see the momentum building.
Don't fucking do it.
Surely FPX make the finals and qualify, right?
You have to make finals to qualify in Europe.
Yes, you have to make finals.
So one of NIP Guild doesn't qualify. Holy shit. Okay, well,
that's just for challenge finals.
I don't even want to make
Surely FPX make the final, right?
They should. I mean,
they should look at their bracket. They should.
Out of any time where they should, this is it because they're not trying to win the tournament. They're just trying to qualify. So.
True. Yeah, they only have to get second. That's very true. All right, I want to go on a little bit of a segue here as well, though. Actually, I think we saved this topic for next week. We've already dragged on.
Yeah.
What is it?
Are we not predicting the semifinals here?
Do you want to predict? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I didn't know whether people felt confident enough to pred.
I'm really feeling NIP in this match based on what I saw from Ascend. I still think Ascend looked like one of the better teams. Guild to me seems like they're just straight shooting, and I think they'll do very well. I think this will be a very close match. Opportunists versus FPX is what everybody's saying. FPX. I think this might be a 2-0. For FPX. I just feel like FPX is very strong. You could feel the momentum rising.
I agree.
No, but in all seriousness,
the moment.
In all seriousness, their Masters run, like we hyped that up really, really hard because it was good. And some of the stuff that I don't remember any of it at this point anymore, but I just feel like FPX.
Also, with Sky being such an important part of the meta, I feel moving forward, it seems like FPX has like a huge head start on the Sky train.
Shadow is fantastic. Yeah.
I feel like they have a huge head start with understanding how they want to play with Sky.
Yeah. I feel fairly confident in FPX. So give them like a, I don't know, 60%, 65%, something like that. Maybe even 70 if I'm feeling it on the day. But I mean, maybe. They looked extremely good when they were playing against every team other than Ascend.
70%.
The momentum is building, Wyatt.
The
momentum is building.
Momentum.
I feel good about them. As for Guild NIP, I don't know. I really feel like any team could take that. Guild have been like low-key doing extremely well recently. They've beaten all the teams that we've been excited about. You know, like when I was excited about Diffuse coming up, Guild beat them down. Alliance beat Heretics, Guild beat them down. I think it's very feasible that Guild could win this match as well. I really don't have a favorite in this. Okay, well,
all right,
thanks,
cool.
Wyatt.
Good thing we did that.
Let's move on.
Listen,
So I want to quickly
one.
I want to quickly go back to the NA bracket though and see if we've got preds for that too. And then there's one final topic, and we need to wrap this up before the 3-hour mark. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose my job as the host here. So if we could take a look at the NA bracket. I can't remember which teams play against each other, but I just want to run some quick preds on the week's games. And then we'll talk about, we'll return back to EU for some drama. Because, God, I love drama.
Okay.
The only game I remember off the top of my head is XSET BBG, so we could start there.
Okay. What do you guys think about XSET BBG then? Balla, you brought it up. I'm going to ask you first.
Yeah.
Go Balla.
Dude, I feel like we keep ignoring XSET. I think BBG is still a new team. I think XSET is just strong and consistent. I have to go XSET here. I'm not super confident because I just have no clue outside of like what Poach and Mark are changing up in the team, and if that really enables critical in them. I think that they could come out really, really swinging and XSET lose 2-0. But other than that, I think it's the other way around. I think XSET will take it.
I think if they're in honeymoon phase, BBG, they win this if they're still honeymooning. Like, obviously, XSET has the more consistent results, but if they're still honeymooning and playing like they were versus Sentinels, I think BBG wins. So...
I'm going to give it to XSET. I think XSET are just they're the more consistent known factor. And I feel like I think that their experience will kind of carry them through here, unless BBG are still firing on all cylinders, feeling the honeymoon hard. Things are still clicking.
I'm assuming then that
I just haven't seen enough of BBG. But
yeah, I assume everybody's in for Envy over version 1. Then we're feeling bold enough to pred version 1 as the big upset here. That would be sizable.
I think I'd go for version 1 here. I think I'm like slightly for version 1 because we are Zelsis. Like we are Zelsis. That's basically all I have to say about that. No, Envy, like they've looked good. They've always looked good. They're qualifying gods, but at this point, like it's qualifier after qualifier after qualifier. If there was ever a time for them to lose in this first round, I think it'd be version 1. Somebody who has just constantly been waiting for the opportunity to be in the challengers events. I think this is a team that can upset them. Yeah.
Actually,
I'm not super confident.
I might agree with Balla.
Oh my god!
Wow, now Wyatt's coming here.
No. I was thinking I might be on the version 1 train as well. I think this is a way closer game than people are going to give credit for. I might go with the version 1 as well. I'm trying to think about how the maps are going to go down here though too, because if in that Envy game, they blew up Ghost on Haven. They were playing really well with the Astra. I said on Haven.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is. I'm just like even more confident now that I'm looking at this.
And Haven went through on the version 1 phase. Vine did not.
Do it.
I'm going with version 1. Yeah.
You're mental.
I'm going with version 1.
No.
You're both insane. You're both insane. Okay, let's move it along. Cloud9 Immortals.
So you're not going with version 1?
I'm not going with version 1. You haven't convinced me.
Yeah,
Cloud9 Immortals. Sell me.
I want to predict Immortals here so bad, but Immortals isn't I feel like this show and Immortals has a relationship that has not been defined yet, but we need to define it as in we always like, holy shit, Immortals are pounding, they're owning, and the early stages
You're
of like
your
every
own
challengers,
individual Avast. Like, come on, man.
And then as soon as we get deeper into the tournament, Immortals like they do like the egg test, which you used to do in high school, where you'd see if the egg would survive when it hits the ground, and they hit the ground and they splat. Like every single time, like Immortals fucking owns in the beginning in the qualifiers, like of all these tournaments, and then they beat hard when they
we're
get
basing
deep.
this off of Challengers 1 where they lost.
No, I'm not going to base it off of Challengers 1. I mean, realistically, Immortals, based off how they're looking, I think should win this match, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
But I know that's what they're going to do. Okay. They're going to egg splat as soon as we do it, as soon as they play. I know
they have looked worse as Masters went on and as time went on. They definitely looked worse, but
they should win this match. They should.
I mean, Immortals were excellent against TSM.
TSM.
That cannot get lost in the TSM not looking good, because Immortals were really good. They had great setups. TSM could never crack them. They were playing the Astra very well. I mean, part of my question is, what is happening? Is Nature playing? Is Rossi playing? It doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter all that much,
I don't
honestly.
think it matters that much. I think Immortals look good in both ways. Are you gonna persuade yourself that Cloud9's gonna win?
I'm thinking about it.
God
This
almighty.
is fucking Cloud9.
Your relationship with C9 is disgusting. You're getting roped back. It's an abusive relationship between the two of you.
I am, for some reason, tempted.
They rope you in, they break your
because
heart.
Of
It's happened over and over
because
again.
you're looking at
because
the
of
logo. You're looking at the logo, and you're only seeing C9. You're only seeing the brand. You're like, I'm Wyatt, and I love C9.
Here's where I feel. I think Cloud9 will do well in this tournament. I don't think they're going to do well against. Like, I think that this will be a close game, and Immortals will take it. I still have decent faith though in Cloud9 and where they're going. Does that help you?
Let's return back to this.
Okay, well, we have one match left, and if anyone preds an unbox here, I'm going to need to know what you are.
I mean, it's
on.
definitely going 100 Thieves. I think 100 Thieves might win this whole thing.
You think? They're the favorites to win the whole thing?
I think they very well may.
Okay. I'm still looking at Immortals and
That's
Envy. I'm not convinced on 100 Thieves yet.
What are you saying? X at or 100 Thieves potential final? Who are the top two teams here? Who are the... If the bracket disappeared...
Probably 100 Thieves and Envy.
Oh, and yeah.
I could see Immortals making a deep run, though. I could see if they play like they did versus TSM the whole tournament, if they don't do the classic Immortals thing of looking really, really good and then looking way worse as they go deeper into the tournament, Immortals could make a really deep run. I could see Immortals beat 100 Thieves if they play really, really well like they did.
Didn't they beat 100 Thieves the last time they played?
Yeah, that's the thing. They have played great, but they just never managed to make it to like the final stages. Like they always lose before that, but they have such good momentum early in the tournament and into the mid rounds that like you're like, oh wow, this team's like gonna go really far, and then they just beef, or maybe they just and not so much beef, they just don't finish.
Second place challengers 1, and what, a third place challengers 2?
Yeah,
and then an 8th place. Did they go out last? No. They, what was it in Masters? They lost to LG, right?
They're just never able to really fully capitalize on how good they look at fields.
Oh no, 100 Thieves 2-0'd them in Masters.
I feel like there's a bit of instability here as well, where it's a bit up in the air. These aren't even the teams that we expected to make it here in the first place. So fuck me, don't listen to us. Jesus Christ, it's not going to be useful for you. I'd like to move on at this point though, because we have some juice.
I'm still mentally debating.
Oh, go on then.
Cloud9
Please
Immortals.
pick one. Flip a bloody coin.
I'm gonna. Oh no! I feel like this is another one. I think it's closer than people may think.
Get on the Leaf train, bro. Just do it.
We're gonna go the Plat Chat coin.
Let's go.
I'm going Cloud9.
Let's go.
I think I'm gonna go Cloud9.
It's me and Avast versus Wyatt and Balla the entire way.
Did you say Cloud9 as well, Balla?
No. I'm not going for Cloud9. I just wanted Wyatt to go for it.
The devil on his shoulder.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Cloud9. I think the upper bracket final might be 100 Thieves versus XSET. Okay, those are the extent of my prediction.
I wanted to talk about some other juice which we've been hearing whisperings of over in Europe, and I want you to explain what you know, Wyatt, and I'm going to add little pieces in.
So I was doing a watch party stream for the NA games, and just some of the Twitch chat journalists, like you'll see the same chatters. Somehow they always have the juice because they just have, I don't know. I imagine they have one of those massive setups in front of them with 80 monitors. They have every pro's stream open at the same time, and all the information is just being inputted into their brains. They somehow are aware of everything happening in the pro scene at all times. Whenever someone goes to the main menu, all of the data of the friends lists just instantly goes in. Wait a second, they're not scrimming with the Hazed anymore. They just somehow are always aware. And they were telling me, someone was like, hey, listen, I was watching like a stream and I have a Google Doc. I don't know. They have audio recordings. They have photo evidence. They somehow got and collected this information that SEN's coach was in game or not necessarily in game, but was somehow in game leading for SEN throughout the grand finals. And Heretics are aware of this, but it hasn't really been made public. It hasn't become a thing. And there is evidence of it, and it did happen. And evidently, the rule about what coaches, or rather the rule about when coaches could talk, wasn't actually in place for Masters.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So
they didn't actually cheat. They just
I was so confused when I saw that coaching post.
Yeah.
From VCTE, I was like, what is this about? I had no clue.
Can you try and find the coaching post? It was an official post released by Riot that said, we apologize for making a mistake with the rule book over in EMEA. Was the summary of what they said was, we're not going to admonish any of the teams. It was our fault that we didn't include this ruling in the rule book for Masters 1 for EMEA. And therefore, the tournament organizer told some teams that they were allowed to have their coach talk during matches, and other teams didn't know that was something that was available. You know, it was only, here we go. Here it is. This was just released, very small, 7 days ago. Nobody really picked up on it, and now more details are starting to come to light based on people just talking about it in Twitch chat, and eventually the pieces getting put together. After the conclusion of Masters 1, Riot became aware of inconsistent enforcement and communication of rules regarding coaching during an ongoing match. But that provision, this rule, was not in the Challengers rule set, and tournament administrators incorrectly and inconsistently communicated this rule to coaches, resulting in some coaches receiving permission to come with their players while matches were going on. It was an error on the part of Freaks for You, which apparently people are having enormous other issues as well with Freaks for You.
What is that?
Freaks for You are the tournament organizer that run the whole of challenges.
So like the NSG.
Yeah, the NSG of EU,
but
and apparently
they don't have the quality.
They
of
don't
NSG.
have the quality of NSG, apparently.
Sure.
And so basically what they're saying is no penalties are being issued. We've aligned all of our rules moving forward. We apologize to the impacted teams in the Valorant community, which is all good. I mean, when I saw this 7 days ago, I was like, oh, well, this must have been they just noticed that the rule was that the rule wasn't listed
But
in the rule
surely
book.
it didn't impact like an important game.
Yeah, like
no
surely
one
it was
took
just a
advantage
small,
of this.
yeah, or like surely
like,
it was
oh,
just a
maybe,
small
like-
team that discovered it, right?
Sure.
Kurt, can you find the Ascend YouTube page, which has only recently just been made, by the way, because Ascend are like a shell company for Raise Your Edge. Raise Your Edge weren't allowed to compete in Masters under Raise Your Edge because it's a betting website. They're promoting a poker website, I think. And so that falls under the rules of Riot, so they had to make this company Ascend and play underneath it. It's still the same company as far as I'm aware,
Yes.
or at least parent company. So Ascend have just started a new YouTube channel, and the first video they posted on their YouTube channel was comms from Masters 1.
Good way to get subscribers, interest in the channel.
A great video.
Yeah.
A great video. I actually loved the video. Weird, though, that their coach is coming in the middle of the video.
Oh, well, that's what I mean. That's
odd.
a great marketing strategy. Just put out there that you have your
there it
coach
is.
coming. Everyone will go to the channel to see what's going on.
It was no, it wasn't this one. It was that one, The Sound of Becoming VCT Masters EU Champs. It's the one that's yellow.
The
that
11
says
minute,
voice
the
comms.
11 minute
Yep.
one.
Yeah, and during this one, weirdly, you'll hear like the coach. No one in the comments knows it because they're just this. Like I said, this isn't really something that's hit the public knowledge at this point yet. And I'm sure at some point, if other coaches are aware of it, they'll want journalists to look into it or Riot to look into it in a bit more detail. But if you're able to hear the audio, you'll actually see their coach's face pop up because he says something and they pop the face of their coach out with. That's not their coach. There.
No.
Let's go, Keyless. Let's go. That's their coach talking. That's NBS, who was. They haven't provided comms of like the in-between round segments where you would expect a coach to have the most input. But if he's in the comms for these moments, he's presumably in the comms in the middle as well. I mean, perhaps not. Maybe he just wanted to be in there for moral support for the team. He doesn't appear to be coming throughout most of the video. But it does seem like the evidence would suggest that Ascend had their coach as an important part of their comms structure, or at least offering more input than would normally be allowed because of a failure of the rules from the TO and from Riot.
There he is again.
Isn't this fucking wild?
It is pretty wild.
This is insane.
Because
Why-
Ascend
like
weren't
we
a
are
top
wild.
team before this either.
Is this the first major story we get to break as Plat Chat? Is this the first one
Twitch
that we get to
chatters
break?
broke the story.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're really breaking it, to be honest. We're just putting the evidence together that's publicly available.
Well, but I mean, the thing is, that's essentially like if the most of the public isn't aware of it yet, and we're collating the evidence and then presenting it.
Well,
I almost feel like
Here's what I'd like to say, Avast. This needs more looking into by some proper journalist in the scene. I'm not willing to do the necessary legwork and interview the people involved in like Ascend and the other teams, because who knows whether other teams were also doing this. Has anyone interviewed?
Well, it said in the post that it was inconsistent between multiple teams. So
Exactly.
It has to be.
Exactly. So there might have been more than one team. It doesn't mean it was just Ascend, right? There
Yes,
could have been
exactly.
multiple teams that
That's
were
my
doing
point,
it
yeah.
and some that weren't as well. So
was it? Sorry, it was like admins were miscommunicating the information.
the rule wasn't included in the rule set. Presumably, this is me speculating, Ascend realized that, said to the tournament admins, well, if the rule isn't there, can we have our coach come?
Yeah.
And the tournament admin said, well, if it's not in the rules, then I guess, yeah.
and probably some admins were like, well, no, that's stupid. You guys can't have your coach come, because it's kind of basic common sense that like, because a lot of these guys, they've been from CS and or other FPS games, and the rule of thumb is your coach doesn't get to calm during the round. That's like, it just doesn't work that way. So obviously some admins were probably like, oh, I don't see the rule, but it probably should be there. Maybe they wrote it in invisible ink. I don't know. Like, but it should be there. And like, they were like, no, you guys can't have a coach comp. But this one admin, whoever they probably got the one admin that was like, well, it's like this guy only knows how to follow the rules to a T. And he's just like, it's not in the rule book, so go right ahead. And then like they did it, if that's the case. But if this is the case, this is honestly, you can't blame Ascend if this happened, but realistically, like, they were getting away with essentially murder in this case, because like, this should not be allowed and it should not be possible.
I mean, for context, in CS, this was allowed for a while actually, until Valve stepped in and
until Valve stepped in and said they couldn't. Yeah,
exactly. So it was actually allowed for quite some time, and we honestly have no clue how Riot's approach to coaching has been, except for maybe the rules and stuff like that. They haven't said. They're talking about like adding coaching slots and stuff like that. For all we know, this is where they actually wanted us to go. But
I mean, I don't think that is true though, because they've always had the ruling that you can't. They didn't even let the coach talk. Like your coach can't talk in between rounds. Your coach can't even talk in the. I don't think your coach can even talk in the halftime, can they? I think the coaches only allow tactical pauses and in between maps.
Timeout. The one timeout.
Yeah, one timeout for the whole map and in between the maps. This is massively different. Like at the very beginning of this video, their coach says, I believe this is the direct quote. He says, definitely one lurking. Like as they're getting ready for a retake.
Okay, see, I was under the impression so far all he's saying is just like, let's fucking go after the rounds.
The first thing he says in this video is reminding them to check for... Can we play it with audio, Kurt? Like from the very beginning? You guys won't exactly know who's talking if you don't know what NBS's voice sounds like, but I've corroborated it with his face popping up later on. That is his voice that's saying that at the beginning. And he says something like, oh, let's have a listen anyway. It's like right at the beginning.
One lurker 100%, guys. One lurker 100%.
Yeah, the one lurker 100%, one lurker 100%, I believe is NBS's voice.
Well, then just let's do his voice at the end of it, because as soon as the round ends, we're gonna hear him again. Yeah. After they get the defuse. So you can listen. We'll get a live reaction here on audio. Let's see.
And one under. All three backside. 1 HP, Sage, 1 HP. Low. No!
Let's go!
I'm pretty sure that's the same person.
I will wall main.
Well, again, wait, now let somebody else.
Again?
One lurker 100%, guys. One lurker 100%.
That's the same guy that says, let's go, Keyless, let's go.
Yeah, it does sound, yeah.
Anyway, if it isn't fair enough, and that's why I'm saying that journalists should actually properly look into this and like do interviews. You shouldn't be getting your information from 4 Papagas listening to a YouTube video. But there's at least something more to look into here. And I'm not even saying that there should be a punishment for Ascent. There shouldn't. But this isn't in the rules. This is an enormous TO failure. An enormous TO failure. Bigger than anything that we've seen so far in Valorant. And it's just been quietly, bye-bye, brushed away. Like, this needs looking into.
They got the entire, like, Challengers Master Circuit for the entire year. Like, at the very beginning. There was, like, a press release and everything. So, yeah, that's...
Yeah, and big time. Not just that, but this is also... something where it was massively impactful, potentially, to the results.
To the finals.
Ascend is a team that won a very close series against FPX and won an insanely close series against Heretics to come out on top. Were Ascend a fantastic team? Absolutely. Would Ascend have been a fantastic team without their coaching comms? Probably they'd have been great. Would they have won? I don't know.
They did lose to NIP.
They did lose to
they did just lose to NIP.
I have to be the other voice.
It brings up at least questions, right? About how good Ascend are going to be in the future and whether it had an impact and how much he was actually involved. These are all important questions to actually go out there and answer. And we are not journalists. That is a ripe little story. I'm sure some other coaches in the scene as well would be happy to talk about this kind of stuff. This is an important, big story that's going on at the moment in Europe, and nobody's talking about it right now, and they should be. So if you're out there, get involved, please. As long
Lord
as you
knows
have,
if that happened with 100 Thieves and
God,
FaZe,
can you fucking imagine? Can you imagine if this shit had happened in NA?
Frost was leading the team secretly the whole time.
Lord almighty. David Denis is the puppet master, the AI puppet master, controlling T1 to a master's
I hope he's not
finish.
the puppet master doing the double controller smokes. I hope he's not like double controller David Denis. I hope not. I hope that's not the puppeting he's doing.
Yeah, but this is huge stuff that's going on over in Europe.
I want to know if this is the case. I want to know which teams were able to take advantage of it and which teams were not, and completely reshape my understanding of what happened in EU and Masters and all of that.
Exactly. It does just it forces you to remodel what you know about Masters based on the
almost
advantages that some
invalidated.
teams had.
Almost like,
yeah, possibly. I mean, it is an enormous advantage. If you're able to like Discord share your players' screens and just comm like you would in a scrim, except you're able to comm and give them input. That's huge.
Dude, you have somebody who's able to like look at literal VOD footage while live or other stuff too. Like that's crazy.
That's a ridiculous advantage because like the thing is that's so important. It's why people talk about like the scrim bucks results so much is that when your coach is there during your scrims and you're able to get constant feedback and stuff during this and you're in that environment, it's very different when you have someone in your ear reminding you like, hey, check this. Hey, they just did this. You can do this, like pop this smoke right now and like go for the execute, right? When you have someone in your ear being able to tell you that when you're so busy worried about checking your angles, like taking the duels, you're having someone there to remind you of some fundamental stuff or some executes is like a huge advantage. And being able to influence the game.
Crazy stuff. I mean, just the juiciest drama that you could ask for coming out from what was probably the best tournament that I've seen in Valorant as well, the EU Masters. And then you get this stuff coming out afterwards as well. Holy moly. But again, not saying that SEN did anything wrong by the rules.
Followed the rules.
Yeah, they followed the rules literally.
Followed what the admin said according to the Riot post too. Like,
yeah, you can't be mad at them. But okay, needs more looking into. I think I'd like to end on the juice.
Okay.
But there's one final topic every single week, and it's the most important one.
Is it juicy too?
It might be. It's Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Dinner's almost ready, but right now it's time for Wyatt's Weekly Award.
Is that a juicy chili?
That smells good.
Yeah. I suppose so. This week, the Weekly Award. Going to a group of gamers who deserve a little more.
Okay.
And it's XSET. Because no one on the planet wants to give XSET credit for being good. No one wants to even acknowledge their existence. People talk about like, oh, who's in like your top 20 teams? They don't put them in there.
They do.
No, they don't. People don't.
They absolutely do.
No, but I did see, it was kind of, I was just scrolling. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to miss anything before the show. And there was like some post on Reddit that was just like, some guy was just like, here are my thoughts on the top teams. And he just includes every team but XSET. Of course. Because XSET, for whatever reason, they simply will not be acknowledged by the public. People don't acknowledge that XSET have just been consistently really good over 2021. They don't acknowledge the climb that they've made. I mean, the team has been around for like almost 9 months now, maybe.
Has it really been that long?
They've been together for a long ass time. They've been practicing with pretty much the exact same five. I think they made the one BCJ change. But for the past, I think it's like 8 months now that they've been playing. They've made that one change. They've been grinding away. They've gotten to the top level. Again, they're in the first qualifier. Again, I think they're going to make the Challenger finals through this first qualifier.
Very possible.
They're very likely to be able to get through again. And still, people are probably not going to acknowledge them as one of the best teams in NA, which they are. They're up there. So I'm just this is my give XSET a moment of credit for being a solid team that just simply does not get the love that they deserve. They're a well-rounded team. They have some excellent players, but have just always, I think, been notable for being, in my eyes, one of the better teams with the utility in the game in NA. They just have a good understanding of how to actually use the utility as a team. And we even saw that. Like, they had, a good win over NRG, which I think maybe still people have NRG in that frame of mind, kind of where we were talking about earlier, where it's they don't really have much of a direction. But NRG recently have. They have been really good. And with Tex as well, another great player that added to the roster, and Xset able to beat them. Trying some new things. They were running the Astra as well. They were running a bit of the very rare NA Sky. Sky stock's going up. But Xset, they just deserve a little bit more credit. So this is my Xset Bren moment. Bren's not here to love Xset, so I will.
Yeah. Well, that should be cool. Who do they face first?
BBG.
Oh,
BBG.
Okay. Well, Avast's hoping that BBG just pound them.
I'm not hoping that BBG pounds them, but whatever.
Avast's a real Xset hater, actually.
Yeah,
Always talks
unbelievable.
about it.
I have
He's the guy
literally
making these
never hated
threads.
on Xset. In
Top
fact, when
30 NA
Bryn
teams,
first
Xset not
started
mentioned.
simping for Xset, I would be like, yeah, I agree. Xset's pretty good. I think they're underrated. They're doing Viper shit. Like, I like that. And then now it's turned into I hate Xset somehow. Now, because I don't participate in the Xset 5 minutes of silence that you have to do in every episode now moving forward, I'm going to be the Xset hater. So that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Look at that. Wow. That's so pretty. Some of you aren't subbed. You should be subbed. Actually, our channel is growing pretty rapidly, but there's still a lot of viewers that aren't subbed. I think it's like a third of our viewers aren't subbed. So go sub to the channel, and then you'll be able to see cool stuff like this happening more often. And if we do some live co-streams, you'll be able to follow them as well. Well, that about wraps it up for this week, I think. All right. So we'll...
Oh, wait. We need they need to leave a comment.
Oh, yeah.
We need engagement. Our engagement rate needs to be
Tell
high.
us what Xset means to you in the comments below.
Yeah. Tell us what... If you can write a love poem to Xset, we'll pin the comment. The best love comment, best love poem. If you can write a sonnet, I mean, sonnets are long. You don't have to write a sonnet. Just a
if
little
you do,
couplet.
you'll probably win though.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably win if you write an entire Shakespearean sonnet in iambic pentameter. But you don't have to go that far.
We need a stanza on Thwyfo, and we did, and all the players individually.
Yeah, or you can just leave a comment about what you like about Xset, and we'll see you next week. Bye, folks.